You're listening to the Joel Martin Mastery Podcast, your source of music news, stories, and 2-hour deep dive interviews with bands that have sold over 150 million albums. If you've been enjoying the podcast, please take a moment to subscribe, like, comment, and share. Now let's dive in to today's episode. Welcome to the Joel Martin Mastery Podcast. Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it. We are joined by a very special guest. He's achieved a level of mastery as the singer, songwriter, and guitarist for the 3-time Juno-nominated and 2-time gold-selling band, Widemouth Mason. So welcome to the podcast, Shaun Verreault. Shaun, how are you? And is it true that while on tour with AC/DC, you got to play Malcolm Young's guitar?
Hey, Joel, I'm great, and that is indeed true. We had finished a tour across the country and thought we were in for some rest and relaxation. All our gear was in a train going from Ontario or somewhere back to Alberta where it lived. And we got a phone call from AC/DC's business manager saying, Slash has dropped out of the Stiff Upper Lip tour. If you can be in Florida the day after tomorrow, you can open 3 shows. And if the crowd doesn't kill you, which they might, because the promoter isn't going to advertise a sold out show that, oh, by the way, Slash is no longer going to be there. So you're going to walk out and there will be people expecting Slash. So we scrambled together whatever gear we had and showed up on stage. And there was that excitement. And then we walked out and everyone went, huh? What? Where's the guy in that? What? And we played 3 songs with a bunch of guitar playing and soloing and no speaking in between them. And little by little, we felt this sort of wave move out into the crowd. And it was like, people are getting us. So we went over well enough with the crowd, and the crew loved that we were really low maintenance Saskatoon, Saskatchewan guys when they were like, what do you need in your monitor? Oh man, just my vocal, and then you can go have a nap. Like, I'm good. We don't need much. So we made friends with the crew pretty early on, and Malcolm's tech was a guy named Jeff Banks that everyone called Bison. And one night we were playing a little bit into the tour, and something was going on with the drums, so our onstage tech was dealing with that. And in the meantime, the whammy bar on this strap broke off in it, and it sort of sprung way out of tune with that broken piece in it. And before our tech knew what was going on, before I really knew what was going on, I saw a Bison out of the corner of my eye running toward me, and he put a guitar over me and took that one and plugged me in, and I looked down and I was playing The Beast. I was wearing Mal's Gretsch Jet with the pickup missing, playing an arena full of AC/DC fans, and it was a surreal moment. The action on it was like this. It was like playing an acoustic guitar, and I just kept thinking, don't drop it. Do not drop this instrument. And by the end of the song, Bison ran out. He had drilled out the whammy bar in my Strat and put a new one in it. There's no whammy bars of course, on the road with AC/DC, but his other gig was working with Jeff Beck. So he took one of Beck's spare whammy bars, put it in my Strat, and brought it out tuned for me by the end of the song. And then after, of course, I was like, man, that's so kind of you, and you didn't have to do it. He was like, don't mention it. It's just the kindest, I couldn't stand to see a bro struggling, so I did what I had to do. No problem, would do it again. So yeah, that is a surreal but true moment that happened in my life.
I feel like we have to pour one out for Bison for showing up big time there.
Cheers, Bison.
That's amazing. And man, it must have been such an honor. One, you're essentially replacing one of the greatest guitarists of all time on stage, and you're opening for one of the greatest guitarists of all time. Did you feel like it was such an honor? Is there, a part of you that feels some kind of imposter syndrome as someone growing up, maybe listening to AC/DC? And
I do when I reflect back on it. And, we were in awe of many moments in our career where all of a sudden these people who had been heroes or faces in a magazine were all of a sudden coming to say hi in the dressing room or inviting us on the road with them or whatever it was. When we were in the moment of those things, we were really fortunate that our arc was a very gradual, even though it may have seemed quick, or when I reflect on it, it was fast. But when we were in the midst of our own Titanic submersible, except it was ascending rather than descending, we were just in our own little bubble of, we play gigs, we do our thing, we write records, and these things happen. So one by one, it would be like we played a bigger club in our hometown, or we started playing gigs where we were playing all our own songs instead of covers. And then Big Sugar saw us really early. Our manager just would not leave Gordy alone until he went to see the opening band on a show in Saskatoon that we were doing. And he, to shut the manager up, went, "All right, I'll watch a song." And he watched a song and went, "What are these guys doing for the next 2 months? Why don't they come on the road and open our, to dig in a hole and just come out?" They had this sold out tour across the country. So we did that. And one by one, our comfort on stage in front of people who didn't know us, that we had developed from playing covers in Yellowknife and Grand Prairie, and places that weren't necessarily too happy sometimes to see a person of Pakistani descent on the drums and a Filipino heritage bass player. We learned and went through those Blues Brothers, Chicken Wire, we got both kinds of music here style venues, such that when we got to the point where we were starting to get bigger gigs, whether it was, hey, you're going to tour theaters with George Thorogood, or smaller arenas and big sheds with ZZ Top, or by the time we got to those AC/DC and Stones moments, it was just like, this is what we've grown to be able to understand how to do. And watching the inside of those machines that produce those huge shows, and watching how the artists are and how they work with their crews and everybody to present those shows, was a huge education. And so we felt in good hands while we were doing it. And any sort of, wow, that was pretty crazy that we got to do that, I think happened when the submersible, when we got out of the submersible for a while and sat on the shore and reflected on what had happened. In the moment, it was just like, we're starting from below zero, because these people are not going to like us the moment we walk out there, because we're not Slash. And I don't know how well any of their fans knew Snake Pit tunes. We thought after that, if our drummer had worn a hat and a wig, they might have gone, far out, Slash is drumming on this one. But as it was a really great learning experience and character builder. And we were proud every time that 3-4 songs in, they started to bob their heads in the right places. And after the first week or so, we could share that, listen, we know we're not Slash, but the guys invited us to do this tour. Malcolm and Angus came into the dressing room and asked if we wanted to keep going after a few days. Of course we said yes. So you're all sitting facing us anyway. We're going to do our best for you. And the AC/DC will be out here in a little while. And every night it worked. And I feel like every good opportunity, every amazing thing that's ever happened for our band has been from us playing a live show and someone seeing it and it opening a door for us.
It's one thing to play a hometown show to your fans, but it's another thing to play to someone else's fans, or even a hostile territory. That's where you really prove your chops. And I guess it's important to note that by the time you were doing these shows with AC/DC, you guys were already 3 or 4 albums into your career.
We had done, and we had toured a lot before we even put out an album. And we put out an independent record that got us signed, and then we re-recorded most of the songs and added a song or two for our self-titled record that came out in 1997, because we'd grown a lot from being on the road 300 days a year. And it would be a mix. In the very beginning, it was still in those days of 6 nights a week, cover bar, play from 9:30 until 2 in the morning. Whether you're sick, whether your throat hurts, and the crowd is there, and they're, it's a northern town, and they just want to drink and fight and fuck, and that's it. And you're sort of in between them and doing that. It became like a chess match, or like Michael Jordan in the Last Dance, where it's like, we're gonna get you. This isn't spite, it's authority and conviction that what we're doing, if you connect with us, we're both gonna have a really good time. So yeah, those were muscles we developed early on. And I feel for bands or artists who like explode off of a TikTok song, and their first gig is in a huge place with a assembled band with a musical director, and they're just learning it on the fly. Where we played for a long time, and like, all right, it's two drunk dudes and two chickens in this country bar. I don't mean chicks, I mean like actual chickens walking around in the bar. And we learned it from the ground up, and had nights where they loved us right away, nights where they hated us right away. And we realized, if you have the microphone, you have the power. You're louder than they can be. But you have to be aware of the seeds you plant and how you harvest them. Some gigs we would do, there would be stand-up comic openers. And that's easily the most terrifying gig in the world that I can think of. And the audience were predisposed to not liking them the second they came on stage. And some parried with them and got them on their side, and some immediately started trying to fight them in the gutter, and it went sideways and they had to be removed from the stage. And so we had seen and learned a lot by the time, to your point of, when we were touring with a lot of these bands, we'd made some records, we'd played some big shows, we'd been in high pressure situations and learned how to let that fuel you and drive you to better performance, rather than being scared and it minimizing what you're going to do and not take any chances and not really explore who you can be in that space, and just have fun with it.
So we're going to do a full 2 hour deep dive interview. We're going to cover your life, your career, your discography. So people look at you today and they see almost 30 years of success. They see the gold albums, the Juno nominations. They see this rock star guitarist. But man, you've had quite a journey to get to where you are. So for the young musicians listening that are just getting started, they might look at you now and go, well, I can't do that. Maybe I can't have a career in music. So let's take it all the way back to the beginning, to where you're closer to the start, like maybe some of our listeners are, and they can relate to your story, paying your dues along the way. So when you think back, where does this love of music come from? Is there maybe an earliest musical memory that stands out to you?
There is, yeah. It's actually not a guitar one. The earliest moment I can remember connecting with music is, my grandmother had, like a lot of people back in the day, one of those organs in the living room with the right hand is a couple rows of organ keys, and the left hand is one of those, hold this and it plays E minor with a samba beat under it. These different buttons on it. I wasn't even playing with that part of it. I was on the floor playing with a little police car toy that I had, and the volume control of the organ was like a gas pedal. So I went, oh, that's cool. And my mom was playing the Ardeen Taylor song, Indiana Wants Me, and there's a siren that you hear in the background of it. So I was playing with the car along with the siren, and then went, oh, that looks like a gas pedal, and sat at the organ. And I guess I either turned it on or it was on. And I just started pressing those buttons, and it was making noise. And it was the first connection of, music's always been something that I turn a thing on and then I passively receive, that it sends me music from the TV or the radio or the record player. And this was like, I'm controlling this. I'm like a driver of a car. I get to choose where this goes. And that was the first musical moment I can remember where I went, this isn't just something that other people do that we listen to. We can produce this ourselves. And it was a real epiphany moment.
Can we tell people that your original instrument is the organ?
For the organ volume pedal was my entry to it. Yeah.
And when did you start playing guitar? And then singing and songwriting came later?
Yeah, much. I started playing guitar when I was about 10. There was a music school in Saskatoon that very astutely realized that a barrier to people starting to take guitar lessons was the cautionary tale of, oh, we bought my kid a guitar and then they didn't want to play after, and then we had this guitar laying around. So they would loan a guitar to a student for 8 weeks while you took lessons, and then if you enjoyed it and wanted to continue on, then you could either buy that guitar or buy another one. So I started doing that, I think originally with my cousin and another friend, where we were taking the lessons together. And it was slow going at first as a 10-year-old. My hands were little and, the notes hurt. It was like I started playing Lego and I was good at Lego right away. Starting to play this guitar thing, age feels like work and it hurts. And there was one moment where in a music book, it was like how to play Jingle Bells because it was almost Christmas. And it didn't have the hey part in it. So I wrote that in and found where the G was to play the hey part of Jingle Bells. And I went, oh, okay, this is sort of like that organ moment. I'm adding something to this by doing it rather than just by rote reading it and playing it. But then there was a day where I got the flu, and that combination of, how your body's feeling and maybe cough medicine or something. I just was home from school and the guitar was with me on the bed, and I just started, instead of opening up the book and playing the music of it, I just started playing with the guitar and like speaking into the sound hole and hearing the reverb and the strings ringing and strumming behind the nut and hearing this sound and playing it like a drum and then picking it up and starting to play some stuff on it. And that unlocked it for me somehow that day, and that mindset shift of, again, yes, there's a school of it where there are rules and things to learn and music to read, but there's another school of it that this is just a thing you can just mess around with and enjoy yourself while you do it as the only child who's sick and home from school. And I just kept doing that, and every day found new things. And yeah, I didn't have a dream of being a singer or a songwriter. I just loved to play guitar. Until maybe quite a few years later, maybe in my teens or something, that I clued into that. I didn't start singing until I was 17 or so, at a school variety night / talent show. I'd never really wanted to do it before then, but stumbled through the guitar into it. But yeah, the guitar was the immediate connection. So had an acoustic kind of similar to this one of the Gittebeck ones, a Seagull that I loved, and then had a paper route to buy my first electric guitar, a candy apple red shred machine, factory produced with a really pointy headstock, and a PV Audition 30 amplifier. Those two just were my life for many, many nights in my bedroom.
So normally I would ask you which musicians influenced you as a young guitarist, but we have a fan question sent in that kind of covers that.
Oh.
So this is from Doug MacArthur from Instagram. His question is, well, he starts by saying, always been a huge fan of Shaun's voice and songwriting style. I'd love to hear about his favorite singers.
Oh, good question. Part of the reason I started playing music was, the beginning of When Doves Cry and the end of Let's Go Crazy. I just loved Prince's guitar playing right away. And when Purple Rain came out, I was 10. So I was exactly right as I was beginning to play the guitar. But his voice astounded me, that he could sing that high, sing that low. It was like there were different characters inside of him, where a lot of singers I'd heard before were a voice. And he felt like he was 4 or 5 different voices depending on what the song needed. And then I realized he's not only singing in these different voices, he's writing from these different personas as well. So that was a big one for me. Loved Jimi Hendrix immediately. And Hendrix, like Dylan, who influenced him, kind of underlined for a young musician, you don't have to be perfect to be expressive and to find your voice. So the fact that he would kind of sing things, or that he was loose and his phrasing was obviously improvisational sometimes, all that rubbed off on me. But definitely Prince was one of the first big ones. And then by the time I was starting to consider singing myself, I found that Black Crow songs were kind of in my wheelhouse, where my voice was pitched and the tone of it. So got really into when Shake Your Moneymaker came out. It was sort of everywhere, but Southern Harmony was my big Black Crowes jam, and just listened to it endlessly and sang along with it, and learned about a lot about singing from Chris and from them. And I think a lot of these people, or if you're a music historian, are like, well, that's sort of the next generation of, the Small Faces or the Stones or the whatevers, or Prince was obviously influenced by these people, or Stevie Ray Vaughan was influenced by these people. But to all those people's credit, in a pre-YouTube time, they were all very open with, like, if you dig me, these are the people I like, and you should check them out. And so I was thinking recently about how hard that was at that time. If you read a Guitar Player magazine and they mentioned a record that you liked, you couldn't just then go to your phone and find that record or find videos of that person performing. So it'd be like, see if you know anyone who has that record, ask someone's older sibling if they have that record, go to the library and try and find it. And you'd really have to sleuth these things out, and find them. And in some ways that made that more meaningful, to find that and understand that about them. So I think that's been a thing that's become clear a lot of the time, is that sometimes doing things a harder way, a more manual way, makes it stick and more meaningful. So learning something by ear and really having to, is it this note, that note, close, nope, this one's wrong, add this to it, is a different experience and takes more work than just calling up the tab for something and learning it that way. But it teaches you so much while you're doing it, about not just learning that song, but learning how to learn songs and different shapes that you would then translate to other stuff. That I think that's been a really important part, like the grinding our way up through the clubs made us ready when it was time to play arenas for somebody else. Grinding our way through our early songwriting, and in fact playing a lot of covers for a while and learning about song structure and what should a bridge do. It's not just an extra bit you throw in the middle of a song because it has to be there. Is it supposed to take you somewhere else? And then when you re-arrive at the way the song was going before, it feels like you've gotten somewhere. Oh yeah, that's what that's supposed to do. So all these lessons that you learn, that now there are many shortcuts to, it feels like. I would tell that young musician that we're talking to, I mean, the music business is completely different than the one I came up in. I feel like I've been in 3 or 4 different music businesses. But the thing that's remained true is, do it for you. Do it for the exploration and the joy that you have in just the feeling of doing it. Because I can say from experience, the moment of an epiphany of discovering a chord or writing a verse or finishing a chorus or jamming with your friends in the basement, and you all hit a note at the same time that you didn't talk about, and it just magically happened because you were listening to each other, is the same level of excitement as playing an arena full of people who are cheering for you. Those moments, of one is not better than the other. They're both lasting, super exciting moments that will shape who you are. And taking a shortcut to get there robs you of a lot of the benefits of it. So the long road, just like learning how to play that first F chord, there's no way around the way it's going to suck and hurt and make your hand feel stupid. And then playing a full bar chord, guitar is just a bunch of those things over and over again, taking the hardest thing you know how to do, and every day making that the second hardest thing. By nature, just moves those things down so that they become easier to do. Playing shows, opening for other bands, learning how to play your own live shows in front of people, it's kind of the same process, you know? So for those young kids, I'd say, you know, yes, you can find how to play that song, and if you're starting from scratch, it's great to be able to see how does that person hold their hand, or and video myself. Am I wasting motion by moving way more than I have to? Could I move just a little bit? Like, look at Trey Hensley's right hand. Look what he does with it. Okay, I should mimic that. For those types of things, that can be really useful. But for writing your own songs, AI can do it for you in a second and then you can learn it. But that's like getting photos of yourself on a vacation you never went on that are forgeries. Like, go on the vacation, do the hard puzzling it out, grinding it out part of songwriting where you write 10 verses and keep two, and dig in and go through times where you struggle with it, go through times where you have to walk away from it, because that's where you find the real lasting benefit and where some real gems just fall into your lap sometimes as well. That again are those moments of this is as good as playing a sold out arena, I promise.
I once saw Sting accept an award, and he said music is its own reward. That was his what he wanted to share with the crowd. And I guess that's important advice. If you can do music because you love music, you might last long enough to get to the point where you achieve a level of mastery on your instrument, and maybe you can then make some money and have a career of it, versus if you think, oh, how can I make money maybe as a musician, you're not going to last long enough while paying your dues to get to the point where you could maybe do this as a career.
Music, the music business is a very humbling thing. And as you said in the beginning, I can look back now and go, it's been 30 years and these tours and these records. But within those 30 years, there were many times where music was the thing, you know, it had been this. And then if you're in it long enough, there will be periods where it does this and maybe has some of these and then has another one of those, but then another one of these. And that was the thing that Malcolm Young called us into the dressing room one night to talk with us. And he was sitting there playing and smoking. And he said, boys, since you're like us and you play music that's very much rooted in the blues, there's going to be times where it's arenas like this, maybe. And there's going to be times where after that, you're in a shitty little club somewhere again. And it happened to us. People don't think about it now since, you know, Razor's Edge and Stiff Upper Lip, and they got to a level and they stayed there. But in the early days, there were times where it was like, you're big. Nah, it's kind of now blues is out of fashion, or whatever. You're not the new thing anymore. There are times where the music is going to be the best part of it. And if you were someone who got into it because there's 3 buses and there's a crew and all I do is show up on stage when I wake up at sound check and play a gig and then there's parties after, that's really fun while that's happening. When if and when that goes away and it's like, okay, we can do this run, but in order to not lose money, we got to be in a van, we got to have this again, it's going to be this situation. For some people, that's it. They're like, I don't want to do that if it can't be like this. For us, we've had a few of those things where it's like it's big, now it's bare bones, now it's sort of caught another wave. And like you said in the beginning, looking out after all these years of making records and going, oh, talking with people after and going, these people we were at your show 25 years ago and we actually met at your show at Barrymore's, and now we have a kid and they play guitar and they're old enough to be here. And so here they are and they listen to you. Or, but I'd look out and see younger kids and they'd be like, yeah, I watch your Instagram guitar videos. I learned about your band from just recently, and I had no idea you had all this other music. I think those types of ways that people find your band, if you just stay open to it and keep playing and keep writing, sometimes doors close and they can't open again. Sometimes people fall apart in that process of looking for those doors and find it a joyless slog. We always were able to lose ourselves in the music and appreciate that anyone was coming to see us anywhere throughout. And that advice from Malcolm really underlined it, that even they have periods where they're like, well, this is smaller. Or we have another friend who is the drummer in Bryan Adams' band, and he's like, at every level, it's kind of the same rinse and repeat day. A 4 a.m. lobby call to get in the vehicle, whether that vehicle is a private jet or a cab to the airport, it's still a 4 a.m. lobby call. And after enough of them, the shine comes off of them and you just go, it's kind of 4 a.m. lobby call. I think we've been able to maintain our gratitude throughout that we got to do it. And we had enough times where, on the Stones tour and on the AC/DC tour, there were nights where Mick had the flu really bad and could barely stand up. And no one who saw him aerobically annihilate that stadium that night had any idea, because he went out and sucked it up and kicked ass and got carried off stage with oxygen tanks. And same with Angus. We saw every night 2 guys would be waiting on the side of the stage and put their arms into a bridge, and they would throw Angus onto their arms and carry him off, because he was running around in circles the entire set. And this wasn't like Madison Square Garden, these nights that we saw those things happen. It'd be like some smaller night on the tour, but they were playing as if not only everyone there had gone to some great lengths and spent money to go see them and got babysitters and parked and bought tickets, but also there are a lot of lives to pull off of the pile, including ones where you're born in a war zone, where you're born and you have very little opportunity in your life. We were super fortunate to be born into the lives we were born in, and then add the layer of get to make noises, and as a result, see the world and have people appreciate you and reflect your own work back to you and open doors for you. So if you don't play as if whoever these people are for you, but I often play and picture in my mind that Prince and Aretha Franklin and Jason Isbell and St. Vincent and Blake Mills are all standing on the side of the stage watching. And even if there's sparse people in the audience that night, I owe it to them to reach and find out what I can do and play as if my life depends on it. And for a kid who will never get to experience what I experienced just because of the circumstances they were born into, if I don't relish that opportunity and make the most of it, then I'm an asshole.
And when you have a career that spans 30 years, you go through not only the ebbs and flow of your own band, but the ebbs and flow of the music industry itself, going through Napster and through iTunes and through streaming. So, man, there's a lot to navigate there. Even if your band is at the top of their game, sometimes the whole foundation upon which your career rests gets pulled out under you.
That's a good observation. When we first got signed, there was not only a rep from the record company in every major city across the country who had great relationships with all the radio. There were disc jockeys who had the wherewithal to play kind of what they wanted for at least part of the time. There were weekly newspapers and magazines around which people gathered to find out what was going on in music. There was much music or much more music, where if you had a video out, there was a good chance people were going to see that if it got some rotation and know you had a new record, knew you were on tour. A lot of that stuff went away, and the format with which people received music changed, and the ways that you could interact with people on social media when it was direct to them went away. And then there was the rise of, I think, these things that we handed the relationship with our fans to, like social media. Wait a second, now the algorithms changed and they're charging us to reach them, or even if we're paying to promote stuff, it's not reaching them. And so, yeah, I feel like I've been in multiple different record businesses in the time we've been in it, which has been fascinating to see. But again, the thing that has remained constant is measure yourself against your heroes, not your peers, and deliver every time you play. I've told this story before about one of the first people I toured with on the road had been playing up in Yellowknife in the Northwest Territories, and he went to go play on like a Tuesday night or something. There was a big storm. There was one table of people in the back of the bar, and he was playing these, John Mellencamp songs. And after a while, I went, "Hey, folks, you don't have to move up front. I'm not going to be one of those guys who's like, hey, there's three, you come rock out. But I'm a songwriter, and since it's just us, would it be okay with you if I'm going to send over a bottle of wine, and can I play you my new songs?" And they went, "Yeah, do." So he played them a bunch of his new songs. He played like he was happy that he got to do that. The band was happy they got to play their original music. And it turned out that Richard Branson, the Virgin mega billionaire, had been hot air ballooning around the world, and his hot air balloon broke down outside of Yellowknife. And so he was the table of people who were in the gallery in Yellowknife that night when Carson Cole went, "Hey, can I play you my songs?" And he was so impressed that he went, "What do we sign this guy? That was a ballsy move. I like that he did that. Let's do at least a development with this guy and see what happens." So again, I go back to you never know who's there. It's not their fault that 10,000 other people didn't come with them. And it also is just more fun to play when you're searching, when you're going for it, when you're pushing your instrument to, again, make the hardest thing you could do yesterday the second hardest thing you can do. So I just like to live there. And I find if I do that, there's been times where we kind of put the brakes on our music business activities when Saf's children and my daughter were born. We're like, I am not going to see her first steps on my phone in the parking lot of a club I've played 10 times. Like, I got to be here for this. So there were times where we kind of put the brakes on it, and there were times where the industry had moved away from us. I was still playing guitar for 3 hours a night, and like some people go to a yoga mat, like some people go to whatever it is. That's where I go to make sense of the world and get right and let my imagination run and express myself and play the day out of my fingers. And as it happened through doing that and exploring songwriting through doing that, we caught a few additional waves after that industry support sort of died down, where we've kind of never been busier or more visible within a certain kind of a music listener's awareness these days for our band. And we're loving it, and we're especially grateful for it, especially, like you said, after a pandemic that put the brakes on everything, during which time I rediscovered just woodshedding, learning other people's songs and arranging them. I'd discovered the kind of tri-slide lap steel technique, and over the pandemic really dug into it and started setting goals for myself to go, all right, I'm going to learn this Beatles song, but not just the chords. Like, I want to play the melody and the chords simultaneously and make it feel like it's an arrangement of the entire song. And then I just kept pushing that further, because it was like, not going to be on the road for a while. I don't have anything that I'm going out to do. So when I have free time, I'm going to focus on this. And bet I couldn't learn Cliffs of Dover or Hot for Teacher or Panama. And over time, it was like, break it down into measure by measure and sit there and figure each measure out and then string them together. And over time, I figured out how to do that. So if you just keep your focus on getting better every day, learning something every day, one of my favorite sayings is learn daily lessons or lesson daily. It's like if you just put money in a bank, the inflation goes up and your money is worth less. If you invest that money, then you're staying above the inflation. And I kind of figure my passion for guitar playing has only increased the more I've added to it, learning other instruments, learning other styles of guitar playing. Once you train your focus on that North Star, other things have fallen back into place. Or at the very least, I'm ready when an opportunity happens, when they're like, oh, add this band to this festival. Jesus, they sound better than they sounded when I saw them in the 90s. Huh, maybe I will check out this new record, So be ready for when that opportunity comes calling as well. And just being focused on the craft helps you in all those categories.
When we eventually get to talking about the newest album that you guys put out, I'm going to ask you, is it possible that you've actually gotten better as a guitarist between albums, even if you're already an incredible guitarist and suddenly I'm listening to the newest album, I'm like, man, I think this guy's reached another level. So I'll ask you about that. And I think that proves what you're saying, that you're still working at your craft for hours every day. It really shows through in the new album, but we'll get there. But first, we got to take it all the way back to the very early days of Wide Mouth Mason. And I don't think I can talk about those early days without a little bit of help. So I have some kind words sent in from somebody that's been there since the very beginning. So this is from Wide Mouth Mason drummer Safwan Javed. And here's what he says. As a musician, Shaun's dedication to honing and expanding his skills is unparalleled. And yet, he's as humble as they come. As a person, Shaun is kind and loving. He inspires, encourages, and sometimes cajoles those around him to push them past their perceived limitations. I'm very fortunate to have him as my brother. So there you go.
Oh, wow. Love you, Seth. Thank you. He calls that part of my personality the goose, like the explorer. Just I'm the one who's like, we got to go skydiving, man, and I make him come with me. And so I really appreciate that. We're the first other musician each other ever played with. He came over to my house. I had just gotten my acoustic guitar, and my mom and dad gave him some pots and pans and wooden spoons because he had started playing drums.
Solid starter kit.
That was our first. That was the starter kit, and then his parents. And we're so fortunate. I mean, being the parent of a drummer can be rough because that becomes the house that all the kids come over and jam in. And I'd certainly known, after starting to play with staff and meeting some other musicians, I got to experience what it was like to go to some other houses where they were like, oh God, okay. You have from 6:30 to 7:15, and then after that you have to stop. Where going to Saf's place with his parents, they were the kindest, most welcoming, like, we'll bring you some tea if we don't, once you work up an appetite, we'll make you dinner afterward. Oh, it sounds great how you're expressing yourselves. And it didn't. We sounded terrible, but me turning up my first amp and that electric guitar, him playing drums, and us just jamming it out. It was freedom. It was flying. It was amazing. And the way that we did it, we jammed on those pots and pans, and then our school band was going to play in the assembly. And so I played trumpet in the school band, but I'd started playing guitar, and for the jazz band, they were going to do a couple songs, one of which was the theme song from the television show The Greatest American Hero, which was an 80s TV show about this bumbling idiot who finds a suit that has superpowers. So I, with my guitar teacher from that school that provided the guitar at first, worked on a solo and the chords for that song probably for 3 months, weekly lessons for 3 months. Believe it or not, I'm walking on air. And I had a solo worked out. I could do it in my sleep. I was ready to, in front of the entire school, I was going to get up and shine. And the guitar I had bought with my paper route was a Series A, like a knockoff of the guitar that Steve Vai played at the end of Crossroads, I think. And its Floyd Rose locking nut failed me spectacularly right before my solo began, where the screws holding the locking nut in went ping and shot off and clattered on the floor loudly. And all of a sudden, it was like a nightmare. My fingers were going to where I had trained them meticulously for months to go, and the notes coming out were as if I'd never played guitar before in my life. Like just the brownest. uh, People were rolling in the aisles, laughing. It was such a failure, and I very easily could have been the sum total of my experience as a live musician because it was humiliating. And then I sat down after and had to sit there for play trumpet for a couple more songs. And there was a drum solo in one of the other songs that we did. There were two drummers in the school band. Staff was one, and there was another drummer. And that other drummer got to do the solo. So staff had to sit there not playing a drum solo. And so, with my tail between my legs, I kind of retuned the guitar as best as I could. And as people were starting to file out of the assembly, I went, "Hey, Staff, jump on the drum kit." And the Pee Wee Herman movie had come out not long before. So I started playing Tequila, and he started playing, and oh, there's this drum solo in it. So we busted it out, and all the kids started dancing, and my prior transgressions were forgiven, if not forgotten. And we rescued the moment. So that was when we started going, hey, let's jam a bit more. And his parents bought him this hammock kit that he had set up in his basement that I think a massive Rush fan must have either retired or died or gotten divorced, because they sold his parents this massive kit with like rototoms and tuned cymbals and things that filled up the entire basement. Meanwhile, he was just learning rudiments on the snare drum and how to play his first.
It was like Neil Peart's drum kit.
It was. There was a gong. Like, it was legit. Neil Peart could have used it for a Rush set. So I started going over there, and we started jamming, and his parents were so kind and welcoming, and play as long as you want. You're really growing and pushing us. I wasn't singing yet. We were just playing instrumental jams with each other. And then in high school, I think I first had been in like a music contest, and I came second to this keyboard player who I found out was in a band at this other school, and someone asked me to come play at their variety night. And I saw Earl, the original bass player in Wide Mouth Mason, was playing with that keyboard player, and he sang, and he called up his older brother Efren, to come sing with him, and they harmonized. And I was like, oh man, this is amazing. I should get in a band with that guy, because then we'd have vocals in our band. And we started playing together a little bit with another drummer, and then at a certain point I went, I wonder what those two guys would be like to play with together. And we started just jamming in Staff's basement. At that time, it was like I was in my shirt from, I know this was still while we were in high school, or just after. And again, it just was like telepathy. We were just feeling things out. And when we would make stuff up off the top of our heads, we would all zig when each other zigged, and zag when we zagged, without talking about it. So we started playing together, and started playing at, anywhere we could that would have us. And I sung a little bit. I had walked into the blues bar. I can't remember if this was right before that or around the same time. I'd heard there was a jam at a blues bar in Saskatoon, and I thought a jam was like everyone sitting around in a circle and strumming guitars and singing together. And I was ready for that. And I walked in, and a guy who later became a really good friend of mine was playing behind his head. The band was on fire. The place was full of bikers, and they were going insane. And I was like, whoa, I'm not ready for this. And I was about to leave, and I felt a hand on my shoulder. And it was a brilliant singer-songwriter named Susie Vinnick from Saskatoon, who now I think lives in Ottawa, or around it. And didn't know me, but very generously in that moment went, hey, kid, so you walked in with a guitar case and you're about to leave. You haven't played yet. I was like, well, I don't know if I'm ready to play at this level yet. And she's like, I bet you are. Well, do you sing? No, I don't. Well, I sing. Come up with me. I'm up next. Get your guitar out. I have a band. Sit in with the band. We'll call out the chord changes, and you'll be all right. And it was one of the first times playing with a band in front of people. And such a beautiful, generous moment of her to do that. So with Saf and Earl, it started to be like, yeah, let's just play and see what happens. And, we'd probably get more gigs if we learned some other songs. And so in our naivete, we were like, yeah, like some cool stuff, like some, album tracks off that Living Color record. And this, we would have got crucified if we went to play a club somewhere with these rando jams that nobody knew. But to us, that was like, oh, people are going to love this.
Some deep cuts.
And some deep cuts and some songs they don't know. That sounds like a really good time in Tabor, Alberta on a Friday night. Mm-hmm.
You play every song from them except Cult of Personality.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. So we started playing the blues jam that I had met Susie at, and getting more comfortable doing that. We'd play little youth events around town and that kind of thing. And I had been working at a music store after high school, renting trumpets to kids and selling some guitars. And then I got laid off one day. They were like, we're downsizing. We can't have all this staff. You're the earliest, the most recent one. We got to let you go. And I was deciding whether I was going to just pack up my Ford Escort that would have died an hour out of town and drive and see what happened. And a couple days later, I got a phone call from this guy saying, I'm a drummer. I'm in this band. We're about to go to Yellowknife. It was with the guy who, on the prior trip, played for Richard Branson in that little bar. He's like, this time we're going up there just to make some money as a cover band. Our guitar player flaked out. We called the music store to see if they knew anybody, and they said, we just laid off this kid and he's pretty good. He could probably do it. And he's not busy. So I was like, okay, great. Are we going to meet and rehearse? And it turned out the drummer Lou was like, no, if you say yes, I'll be at your house in an hour. And here's the thing, we're going to Yellowknife, but we don't know for how long, because when you go there, when you drive, you either take a ferry over a body of water or you drive over the frozen body of water. There's a middle period there where the ferry can't go, but the ice isn't strong enough for a vehicle. So you just have to stay playing at that club that entire time. So it could be 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 7 weeks. We're really not sure. But every night that we do play, you'll make $50 and you'll live in a band house and you'll get some experience. So I was like, all right, let's go. So we talked about songs on the way up. I didn't know this was right after the giant mine strike and labor protests, and someone set a bomb off in a mine that killed a bunch of people. There was labor unrest and a huge war between replacement workers and the owner of the mine and the striking miners. So my first gig as a hired gun is walking into this club that halfway through the first set, a fight breaks out, pepper spray starts spraying. These refrigerator-sized RCMP guys that they flew in from around the country to be there came in and started busting the crowd up. And they were like, get behind your amps, sit behind your amps until it all blows over. It was like, is this going to keep happening? You'd be at a party afterward and someone would be like, out the window now. Dude's just arrived. And you're like, my shoes out the window. So you'd be running across the parking lot in Yellowknife in the winter in your socks because people were fighting in this club. It was baptism of fire. And it was one of the greatest things that could happen in my music career. But in doing that, I played with that guy playing guitar for quite a while and started adding songs that I would sing into the set, because you'd have to do 9 till 3 in the morning and 5 sets and a tag or whatever that was. So his voice would need a rest, and it'd be like, well, you kind of sing. And so I started adding more and more songs that I sang to the list, and then he kept hiring me, and we played every Prince and Grand and whatever all across the West. Sometimes he'd work his way to Vancouver to work on his record at a studio or do things like that. But more often than not, we'd just be on the road grinding it out. And every once in a while, he'd be like, hey, the bass player I usually use can't do this gig. How's your guy? How's the kid you play with? And I was like, oh, he's actually a bass player who played with you before, his younger brother. He's Efren's brother, Earl. So Earl would tour with us sometime, and Earl found that much more fun than the university program he was in, so he dropped out of university and started just playing gigs. And Saf was at one time going to McGill, and he was really dedicated to being in school, but he was kind of starting to feel like, you guys are doing it and I'm not, and I really want to do that. But he was conflicted because he's a very smart, restless intellect, questing guy, but felt like I'm missing this opportunity. And there was one time where Carson went, okay, none of my guys can do it. Can your band play somewhere up in the north with us? And Saf obviously wasn't ready. We started playing, and Carson was kind of nervous and going, this guy's pretty green, and we started shuffle, and I don't think he knows how to play a shuffle, and we started this, and the tempo was kind of all over the map. I don't know if I can keep doing this with this guy. And the thing about Saf is it was really hard for him to hear that, but it was the same with soccer. He's always like the most improved player, where he comes in and it's like, I got this. Oh man, these guys have been doing a lot more. I don't know if you got this. And he just dedicated himself to getting strong meter. And once we started doing a little bit of recording with Carson, and he turned a barn on his farm into a little mini home studio, and we started recording there. And it would become apparent that the tempo at the end of the song is not the tempo the song started at. And while when you're jamming, it's fun to do different kick patterns every bar. If you're playing a song, you kind of it's more impactful if you line up with the bass player on those things and work out some of those moments so your groove science is good. All those things were just crushing to him at first. And then he really threw himself at it and went, I could do this. I want to do this with these guys, and I can learn how to do this. And he became a metronome where you could play a track, go out to eat, heavy food, come back 2 hours later, and he would sit down at the kit and start playing the song at exactly the same speed as we had left before the dinner break. So he really threw himself into it and got ready at that point. So at that point, we had started learning all kinds of songs to back up Carson. And then we started getting gigs where it would be like, well, you can play that same place in Prince George that he played. And we really started learning about being a band in front of people. And that period of playing covers was so useful, again, for us to understand, what is the song supposed to do? What are the sections supposed to make each other feel like? And if you have these songs in front of this crowd, how do you pace it? Do you come out with a bunch of bangers and then have nowhere to go, or do you take them on a ride? If someone starts heckling, what do you do? We learned all those lessons through those times of playing those songs on the road. And then we started to transition into, there were, like I said, with the record company and the weekly magazines and the stuff, there were so many blues and R&B bars across the country that we could go play at, that we didn't have to play top 40 or classic rock. We could play B.B. King and Hendrix and R&B tunes and Stax jams. And then at the end of it, we could throw in a couple of the songs we'd started writing. And there was one day when we were playing as a cover band in Prince George, where I was walking around and sat down next to the band house with a stack of paper, and for whatever reason just started writing. And about half to 3/4 of our first record kind of just came to me sitting there one day without anything to record it on, just with pieces of paper loose in my hand and a pencil. And it was like it was being dictated. I just sat there and the songs were in my head, and it was like, I got to go back to the band house and see if we have a tape recorder to put these on, or work out how they go. And so we just started throwing those into the sets as we would be playing the King Eddie in Calgary, or the Commercial in Edmonton, or Buds in Saskatoon, or those sorts of bars that were much more leaning toward our musical taste. And people started seeing us, and crowds started coming. Um, and we recorded our first independent record in Carson's little farm home studio, and pressed it and put it out independently and sold it at those shows. And that was the era of, again, there were record label reps in each city, and they had their ear to the ground going, this place is packed on a Tuesday. What's going on? All those kids from Saskatoon are playing. Let's see what's going on here. And so after a while, there were more and more record company people coming around, and we started having those discussions and talking about what we wanted as a band, and eventually ended up signing the deal and making the record. And it all kind of started from that.
So you were talking about the independent record, The Nazarene, that comes out in 1996. You guys pressed 2,500 copies. You attracted the attention of Warner Music, who you signed with. Before we dive into the major label debut, where you re-record some of those songs and record some new songs, I was wondering, at what point in this story do you start calling yourselves Widemouth Mason? Because it's a unique band name. And so when did you start using the name? How did you decide upon that name? And I have a confession. I was 12 years old when you guys had your breakthrough album and your breakthrough singles, and I had never heard of a Widemouth Mason jar before becoming a fan of the band. So I just wanted to share that with you, that I only know what a Widemouth Mason jar is because of you guys.
Well, growing up in Saskatchewan, and especially, going to my grandparents' place in Duck Lake, where their version of a freezer was a root cellar, where there was a hole in the ground and they had preserves in Widemouth Mason jars that they would put things in so they could eat vegetables and fruit over the winter. So I've been aware of that name, but where it came about for us was Clarence Gatemouth Brown, the Texas musician, came to play in Saskatoon. And it was right as we'd had different names as a cover band, some of which our agents had just kind of thrown at us. Oh, you're called this week. So we really should settle on a name. We've been going back and forth on a lot of stuff. And that was a way easier thing to do then as well. Tangent that, when Earl left the band for a minute, we were like, should we call ourselves something else? And then we went, well, okay, let's put together a list of names. Every name is taken. Every URL is pre-bought by somebody trying to sell it to somebody who stumbles on this name, basically for every word in the English language or combination of words. So really, we saw Clarence Gatemouth Brown and we thought about those Widemouth Mason jars. And that kind of sounds like a blues musician, Widemouth Mason, like blind something, something. And then the idea of also, this is a thing you put stuff in. This is our container. This is our vehicle where we put all the music that we make together. All right, let's be that until we decide to be something else, and it just stuck.
So I have some kind words sent in from someone that is also a road warrior, just like you. This is from Clayton Bellamy from the multi-platinum band The Roadhammers, as well as The Congregation. Clayton says, Shaun is not only one of the nicest guys in rock and roll, he is arguably one of the greatest and most innovative guitar players in the world. So some high praise from Clayton Bellamy.
Oh, thank you, Clayton. I appreciate that, brother.
So in 1997, you guys release your major label debut. This is the band's big breakthrough album. There's 4 singles: Midnight Rain, My Old Self, This Morning, and The Game. The album went gold in Canada. What thoughts, memories, and emotions come back to you now when you think back to that album that really started this 30-year adventure that you've been on since then?
Yeah, it was, it's hard because when your first time is a lot of things going right, you just think that's how it goes. And there were some things that we only realized after, wow, we caught a series of really important breaks. And I think we rose to the occasion on some important showcase nights where it was like, this person's going to come see you. They have the ability to pull some triggers in your career if they like what they see, or you're gonna open for this huge buzz band from the UK in the Village in New York, and all these people are going to be there. And we were used to those situations from what we had done in Canada, and what we were doing in Canada to get signed to Warner before we got signed to Atlantic in the US was just very much that. Like, do you crumble under pressure and those big, meaningful, pivotal moments, or do you get excited and have your best shows as a result of that added pressure? And we were such a well-oiled machine, and had been on that ride of do that in a little club, do it in a bigger club, do it opening for these people in a theater, that by the time we got to that point, we knew how to lean on those muscles and use those things to go over in those situations.
Do you remember the first time hearing your own music on the radio? Was it independently with the Nazarene, or was it the big singles from the debut major label album?
I remember when we were listening to mixes of the Nazarene, Zach was driving me home and we were listening in his family car. And then he drove away and my voice drove away singing in the car as he continued to listen to it. And that was the first moment I think it hit me that this is not just ours now. This is a thing. And then I think we were on a promo tour, labels used to do, and some probably still do, where before a record comes out, the artist just flies to a bunch of play at radio stations and do different things, and play breakfast television shows and stuff. So we were doing a couple of those where when we were driving somewhere with the rep from the record company, they would and turn the radio up and Midnight Rain was playing. And we played a couple of industry conferences where it would be like all the radio promoters are going to be here, all the people were going to be releasing that single too. Again, tied back to a live show moment where it was like, your song is just one of a bunch of songs they're going to get served that week, but you have an opportunity to make an impression on them with this performance that you're going to do, that a bunch of them are being wined and dined at. And we had a good night, and they were really supportive and got on board. And that was right when, right after we made the record and Midnight Rain was coming out, was when Big Sugar saw it and went, why don't you guys just open for us for the next 2 months? So they had sold out from the Maritimes to Vancouver Island on that tour. And we were, their audience was mostly probably predisposed to liking a band like ours if we did our job. So we went out, and that was a real planter of the seed for us to have an audience and to build from there. So yeah, again, I can look back now and go, a bunch of those things happening simultaneously needed to happen in that order for all those things to go the way they did. Where in the moment, again, to use that analogy, it's like you're in your Titan submersible ascending, and you're just in your little place making songs with your brothers, but everything outside of it starts to get bigger and crazier. And yeah, you hear your song on the radio, you see yourself in first the local newspaper and then national newspapers, and the critics quite liked our first record, most of them, and so the buzz around it was building, and people were giving it the benefit of the doubt and coming to check it out whether they knew it or not. So yeah, it was a hell of a ride to be in that I think we only make sense of after, because in the midst of it, it just felt like this is what's happening and we don't know anything else. So this must be what happens when you're a band.
So behind me, I have my favorite albums from guests I've had on the podcast. And you can see Gordy here from having him on the podcast. And I had it ready for when I did the interview with him. At one point, he looks over my shoulder and he goes, "Man, I was handsome." So I thought that was pretty funny. So most bands will never have a gold album. They'll never have hit singles. So can you describe what your life was like at the very peak of this gold album success with the radio hits? And do you remember receiving the phone call that your album had gone gold?
The way that this played out made it such a beautiful moment in the industry for me. We actually, we were at Canadian Music Week in Toronto at a conference where you go shake hands and meet people and whatever. And our record company surprised us with our gold records. They were like, "Hey, everyone, gather around. Uh, we worked really hard for you not to know about this till right now. These are yours." And they handed us our first gold records. And first, it was like just the at that point, we had been playing every breakfast television show, every small club, every private party for a promoter, every gig, every said yes to everything. So that moment of like, this is what you've earned from that was all in that moment. And then we looked and went, does Earl say Eric Pereira? And then it was a comic. He didn't find it that funny, but we thought it was hilarious. So it sort of broke the tension of that moment. And so he was with the guys from our record company. They're like, obviously, we'll get this fixed. Don't worry. And Staff and I were like, well, I'm going to go put this upstairs so I don't leave it somewhere because we have to continue mingling and doing whatever at this conference. And Staff and I got in the elevator, and the only other two people in it were this older couple, elegant couple in the corner, and we're sitting there, and we hear a voice go, "Well, lads, it looks like you've got some hardware there." And we look, and I'm about to explain what a gold record is to someone, and it's George Martin and his wife. And I went, "Yes, sir, we're a new Canadian band, and this is our first gold record." And he went, "May I?" And beautiful, generous moment. He went to his wife, "Hand me my specs. Hand me my glasses from your bag so I can really look at this." Like, Sir George Martin is responsible for how many amazing records, but he took the moment in the elevator to go, "Wide Mouth Mace. Boys, you never forget the first one. The first one's the best one. This makes me think of our first one with the guys. Congratulations." And he handed it back to me. And we walked off the elevator. And Saf was like, "Did you know that guy? Who was that?" I was like, it's the Beatles producer, Saf. And so Earl had no idea. Earl wasn't in the elevator, and he's the most massive Beatles fan. Our tour manager at the time was a head over heels Beatles fan. It would have blown their brains out to walk into the elevator and see those guys. And Saf was like, "Who was that guy? You know that guy?" But that moment was such a beautiful, like, okay, something has happened, and we get to celebrate. Like those years in the van, those grinding it out, those playing those gigs, we've arrived at whatever this moment is, and wherever it goes from here. That was pretty fucking cool.
So the single "My Old Self" is still to this day the band's most popular song on Spotify. Has 2 million spins. Why do you think people love that song so much? That's the song that made me a fan when I first heard it.
Well, I mean, the easy answer is that it was on Big Shiny Tunes 2, which was that compilation record that was perfect timing and lots of huge songs on it. I think it's one of the biggest selling records in
So
Canadian history. Like
that's
Diamond.
a diamond selling album. And there's
Yeah,
only, I don't know, 42 diamond selling albums in Canada, period. And for a compilation album. So I own Big Shiny Tunes 1 and 2. So
nice.
maybe that's how I first heard it. I feel like I heard it on the radio first. But yeah, I could list the track list from Big Shiny Tunes 2 just from that being such a prized possession of mine as a kid.
Oh, that's awesome. I think it's that, and I think, there are, not to just reciprocally blow his horn, but there are songs that have what I call staff beats on them that are unusual things that I don't think a drummer who just grew up listening to Western music might come up with. And My Old Self is one of them. Companion is one of them. Our song Habitual on the latest record is one of them, where there's a groove that Staff gets into that's kind of hypnotic and rolls along. And I do think that contributes to it. And it's just a really, it underlines how sometimes just simplicity is the right choice. The entire song is three chords, and the verses just kind of spread them out a little bit. So very direct. To this day, if we run into Nickelback somewhere, Chad will stand up on a chair and start singing it across the room at me. It's like the song just connected for a few reasons. But I think, yeah, one of the biggest being that it was on a much loved compilation record.
I feel like it was also a great single because it has the heavier chorus. Like it kind of has this rock slash grungy chorus, which not all your songs have that. So I feel like that opened doors at rock radio, and you guys step through that and you're able to play Edge Fest and you're on compilations with heavier bands. So I feel like that opened a world where you could live in rock with that, but you could also live in the blues side that you had been building up until that point.
That's a really good observation, Joel. I think you're right. I hadn't thought of that, that it's our grungiest, loud, quiet, loud song. So yeah, that's probably a factor too.
And the last thing about this album, and we'll move on to the next one, you guys got a, Juno nomination for Best New Group, which is, I mean, that's an amazing feather in your cap. What did that first Juno nomination mean to you? This is Canada's Grammys. This is your country acknowledging your hard work, your talent, and your music.
Yeah, I mean, the award itself is part of a package that comes along with, you get to go to the awards show, you get to go to the ceremony, you get to see what that, all the fuss and the machinery of that in the industry. As we are, as my friend David Gogo, although I think he now has more, we're three-time Juno losers, Mouth Mason, as Gogo likes to say. But the experience of like going to the show, going to the awards, a couple times we presented awards, there are those moments of absurdity and showbiz that we're mostly focused on the music in, but I like as a life experience just feeling what that's like you said, most people don't get to experience what being at an awards show and being nominated and being part of that is. And we never won any Junos. We won a bunch of Prairie Music Awards, and there were some radio awards that happened. So we did have the experience as well of getting to go up and do an acceptance speech and thank your mom. And in these little, moments of a life, that was an interesting one to be able to tick off. And it means as much or little as you decide it means. Like the recognition is nice, the way that it, maybe makes some more people come to your shows or whatever is nice. The giving the award to your parents to put on their mantle and them being happy and proud of you when they were at first a little like, music biz, eh? That's what you really want to do. That's a nice moment. I think someone said, I can't remember who it was, where like getting nominated is the best, and if you win the award for 24 hours, it's awesome. And then you kind of get back to doing what the gig is after that.
So in 1999, you guys released the album Where I Started, 4 singles, Why, Companion, Lay Me Down, Sugarcane, and Half a Chance. The album goes gold. At this point, with the last album going gold and this album going gold, are you assuming that every album you release is just automatically going to go gold?
A little bit. Yeah. I mean, honestly, in that moment, you're like, because it came from the same place. We did what we wanted to do. We followed our muse where it went. I was really involved in, hey, the first record was a success, and we want to mix it up. I think. Who do you want to work with? Now you can choose from. There are people submitting who want to work with you. And I was like, well, I love what Todd Burke did on the Ben Harper records that I like. And I love what David Leonard did with Prince, and he was, I think, hot off the success of Bare Naked Ladies. 1 week he had worked on and just come out, so our label was excited for us to work with him. But to me, he was Dave the Blade, that Prince called Dave the Blade because he was a ninja with like when you used to have to edit magnetic tape with razor blades. So I wanted to work with those two guys and see what happened. But our songwriting had, evolved, and we were starting to not only tour and see more places, but become aware of more bands. And even when we signed with Warner, their Christmas present to all their artists would be, here's some toiletries bags and passport covers and stuff for when you're on the road. But here's the catalog, and you get to choose 20 records or whatever, and we'll send them to you. So we were really branching out and starting to discover a lot of things when we, went to play the Montreux Jazz Festival. And Van Morrison asked me to sit in and jam with them. And then he was like, "What songs of mine do you know?" And I was like, "Just call whatever you want, man, and I'll go." And I realized I only know a couple of Van Morrison songs. So we started to listen to a lot of different things, and I had started to get into really exploring acoustic guitar a little more. So I think if we were tactically looking at it like, let's build on the success of this first record, we probably should have written 3 or 4 more My Old Self and made the record that. But we did, to use these, we kind of did our Zep 3 as our second record, and some people were baffled by it. Some people to this day are like, "Companion is my favorite song you ever wrote," and if that record only had that song on it. Why connected with people really, really well because it was maybe the most like the first record. But I think going back to the artists we loved, the Princes, the Living Colors, the bands like that really were eclectic and stretched themselves and tried out lots of different things. I think for some people, so yeah, I thought, man, we're just going to keep making gold records. But that was when that record came out, there were some of our hardcores who were like, "I don't know, I might have to see this live to see what I think of it. I'm not sure." And other people who went, "This made me like your band when I didn't like you before." So it was an interesting one, but one that is really close to my heart. We ended up getting asked to tour with the Guess Who because Burton Cummings told us he had to drive from LA to Winnipeg or the island where he was living at the time. And he was like, "I just played that record over and over for the whole drive, and I'm such a huge fan of it, and I want you guys to tour with us." So yeah, it was. I think if we were in it just for maintaining the level that it was at, we would have repeated what we had done a little bit more. But I'm really proud of that we followed our muse and advanced our songwriting and advanced our playing. I started playing slide on that record really rudimentarily. I've struggled with intonation, was just learning how to do it, but there's a lot of pushing forward happening on where I started.
It reminds me of the SNL skit where the producer's like, "Look, I'm just like the rest of you. I get out of bed, I put my pants on one leg at a time, but then I make gold records."
And then I make hits. Yeah, I make number one records.
Yeah, so
Exactly.
David Leonard also worked with Paul McCartney to tie your story back to the Beatles.
Delio's a great guy, living in Nashville now, and just a wonderful, calm presence in the moment. And we're so fortunate in that all the producers who we've worked with not only taught us while we were working with them, but I regularly, when I'm working on a song or working on something that isn't music, and you hit either a locking of horns or hit a dead end, I go to the playbook that they taught me lots and lots of times and go, "What would David Leonard do in this moment? What would Gordie Johnson do right now? What would, if I had to, what would our tour manager, who was always good at defusing situations, what would John Beckett do if I dropped him in this situation right now?" And I draw from that playbook all the time in my life to this day. So it's fortunate to have worked with giants like that.
So I want to talk about the song Companion Lay Me Down for a second. Every time I put on a good pair of headphones and I play that song, it just has a vibe. There's something to it. It feels warm, it feels like coming home. Can you somehow try to put your finger on what gives the song kind of that beauty and that vibe, that atmosphere?
I remember I was sitting on the couch at my mom's and stumbled on the guitar part where it sounds like a lot more is happening than it's happening, right? It's just kind of doing this, but I was sitting on the couch and just fell on. And I was like, pre-cell phone days. If I stand up to get a tape recorder, I'm never going to remember the weird. That's an unusual thing. Like your left hand and your right hand aren't really matching up. If I get up, I'm going to forget this and not remember it. So I just sat and played it for probably 40 minutes until I was like, I think I can probably get up and remember this song while recording it. And it was again listening to a lot of Van Morrison after discovering so much of his music at Montreux, and then having the idea for the first verse and kind of the chorus. And then these are these moments with songs. This is what I was saying, like that moment where you crack a song, crack the code on it, can be as good as playing an arena. I can picture it in my mind. We were on a flight, a red eye to somewhere. Everyone's window blinds were down, except I was awake and mine was up, and the sun was coming up over the clouds, and everyone was asleep except for me. And the final verse just popped in my head for me to write down. And I'll never forget that moment of completing it. To me, that's a lot of what's in the song. A moment that no one else was privy to was that moment of just discovering it. And I think it's a bit of that sort of singer-songwriter Van Morrison thing and the Saf beat. Nobody would play what he played to that song except him that I can think of. So I think that rolls it along as a very unusual kind of a song. And I think the sentiment really connected with people. Like that someone is a dancer while you kind of walk along clumsily beside them, that they're just graceful and steady and beautiful, and you just get to be with them. I think that connected with people.
This episode has been brought to you by the Women in the Music Industry podcast. It's hosted by music producer Rob Wells, who has worked with global superstars like Justin Bieber, Ariana Grande, and Selena Gomez. Through his 1-hour interviews, he shines a spotlight on the remarkable women who are breaking barriers and making their mark in the music industry. Some of his notable guests include Morgan Lander of the multi-million selling metal band Kitty, and Pam Shane, who co-wrote Genie in a Bottle for Christina Aguilera. If you're a fan of the Joel Martin Mastery podcast, you'll love the Women in the Music Industry podcast, which is available on all platforms. In 2000, you guys released the album Stew. There's 3 singles, Smile, Change, and Ease Your Mind. The album's nominated for Best Rock Album at the Junos. That's your second nomination. Smile is a top 3 hit at radio. What was it like to receive that much support from radio?
Man, the radio support was always, again, part of an industry that for a band like us maybe doesn't exist as much anymore, and just changed so much. You could play a song that you'd written in a basement, and all of a sudden a bunch of people were singing it back to you. Was such a powerful moment and recognition of the power of that. And you could see why, when we signed with Atlantic, we delivered our second record to them, and the first thing they said was, there's so many singles on this, it's going to be really hard to pick. We'll get back to you next week. And then they got back to us the next week and went, actually, rap, metal, and boy bands are getting really big right now. We kind of might need something like one of those 2 things. Would you mind going and recording some more songs? And we were like, no, this is the record. So I think we started to feel a little bit of the pull of, radio support, and giving them something that they can play can be really, really helpful to opening doors in your career and having people be in the audience, potentially open up other territories for you. But where's the line of, are you going to try and make something to do that? Or are you going to write the best songs you can, and the one that people around you are going, oh, that's that one. Are you going to help it along by like, maybe let's make this one not 8 minutes long. Like, if this is the one that everyone's going, this thing that you wrote along with this other batch of things that you wrote because they came from your soul, this one has the best chance. All right, well, let's make sure we, do the arrangement of it so that it would fit that to have an opportunity at it. But by the time of Stew, when we started working with Gordy on that record, we really wanted to dig into the Prince, the Sly and the Family Stone, the Stevie Wonder part of our band, where we were open to the idea of, all right, we've proven we can play as a three-piece band. I'm okay if we add a clavinet to this song. I'm okay if we add an organ to this song, and I play trumpet on it, and we stack it so it sounds like a horn section. Let's bring our childhood friend Moochie in to scratch a record on it, and take some chances, do some different stuff. And we had a ball making that record. But again, I think it was at a time where the industry was starting to a little bit move away from what we were doing and doing something that was centered around, we want to make a Sly and the Family Stone record. In 1999, 2000 was like, we kind of want to hear Korn and Limp Bizkit or the Backstreet Boys or something. So I love that record. I love putting it on vinyl. I love how guitar playing style. It was the first time I started exploring playing in some open tunings a little bit, doing some playing a lot more power chords on some songs, which I hadn't really been a power chord guy that much before, and digging and stretching out and trying new things. So it still makes me smile when I hear that record and laugh when I hear Bushy Sue and a bunch of those jams. So yeah, and I think Ease Your Mind ended up being a really powerful moment that we still do live and always connects with people really well. So yeah, but that was the first record that maybe now it has, but didn't go gold right away. So it was like, ooh, maybe the ride we've had isn't just always going to be Midas Touch, and there's going to be some ups and downs in this thing.
The album has really great grooves. Do you find that when you play that album, songs from that album live, that people start to cut a rug, they start to dance?
Yeah, it's a very physical record, and a lot of what Gordy worked on with Saf and Earl on that was listening to old records and the groove science of what are the meters doing on this record? What is Zigaboo doing on the drums, and what's happening with the bass and guitar together? Like, where are each other not playing so there's a hole for each other to fill, like dancers, moving in sync with each other. So the groove and the bottom end and the body part of it, there was a lot of thought put into what that was going to be and what we wanted it to sound like, and sonically how bassy and stubby we wanted it to be. So, and I'm glad it comes across as that. That was definitely the intent.
So in 2002, you guys put out the album Rained Out Parade, 3 more singles, including Rained Out Parade. Another Juno nomination, this time for Rock Album of the Year. Man, you guys can't miss with these Juno nominations.
I have the nominations.
Yeah,
winning them.
I have a deep cut question here. Is the song My New Self on this album an Easter egg to my old self from a previous album?
Good ear, Joel. Yes, it is. Yeah. Both come from a story of a family friend and someone who was killed in cold blood by a jilted ex-lover or something, and for whatever reason that spawned a few songs. There was a third one that was a piece of it. I can't remember what it was called.
My Current Self.
My current, yeah, maybe. I don't know if I even have it in a notebook anywhere, but I remember that those were two of a three-piece song about this event that happened, but I don't remember much else about them. But yeah, My New Self was definitely related. It was a cousin.
Most bands, again, they don't even have one hit single. You guys have not one but 2 greatest hits albums that were put out between 2002 and 2005 with different labels. There's a reason why there's 2 of them, but just Can you
Right.
speak to the fact that your band has a greatest hits album, period? I mean, that must be an honor that you have a career that you not only had a hit, but you have an album worth of hits.
I mean, it is awesome, and something that we're very grateful again to. It's allowed us to do this for as long as we do. We also know the difference between a capital H hit that everyone in the world knows and the kind of hits that we've had where people in Canada might be like, "Oh, that's those guys. Yeah, I know that song." So yes, the greatest hit part is nice. The reason for it. Let's see. Do I have it here? The reason for this one that we were involved in was that our manager at the time also managed like a composer guy, a John Teshi kind of new agey composer. And a promoter from China reached out to him and said, "Look, I have a contract with all the biggest orchestras from Beijing down to Wuhan, and I have a budget to bring over a performer from somewhere else if they're their own compositions that don't have any copyright attached to them, and we can do a tour." So they did it, and it went off well. And the promoter Yu Fei was like, "What else? Who else do you manage?" Norm from Edmonton, and he was like, "Well, I have this rock band that I manage that are doing really well in Canada, and they've toured with." At that point, we toured with the Stones and ZZ Top and AC/DC, and so there's a story behind it. And Yufei was like, rock band. There is a Warner China, so they're on Warner, so that makes it easier. What if we make a record that we call Greatest Hits, but it's really just all the songs that will clear the censor here? So, like our song My Imagination, Bushy Sue, Half a Chance, none of those songs were hits, but they cleared the censor in China enough to go on our greatest hits record that was released there in time for us to go on tour in China. And they created this Beatlemania thing where one of the people involved with the promoter was an English teacher, taught people their English. And he hired all his students to make signs and come to the airport when we landed that were said our band name, and they screamed like it was Beatlemania. They had no idea who we were, but the press caught wind of this and they had positioned us. You can see on this was the poster for all the shows we did there. It says like open for the Rolling Stones and AC/DC and ZZ Top, like on the poster itself. So like you don't know it, but these guys are a big deal. So we toured there for 2 weeks playing these massive theaters with full of people who had no idea who we were, but were like, apparently these guys are a big deal, that they created this myth of our giantness. And I'm not 100% sure if it's true, but people were telling us that we were the first North American rock band to tour mainland China when we did that tour at that time. So it was again another crazy experience. And outside of the band, some of the most interesting things I've done in the last few years, working with promoters, would be to go like entertain troops and scientists who were posted at alert on the northern tip of Ellesmere Island up in the Arctic, or in outside of Dubai, or in Afghanistan, or wherever. And I've gone on these trips as sort of adventures, not only to see parts of the world, but to discover like most of the kids in this rotation, and they were kids, would have been fishermen a generation ago. But those jobs don't exist in the Maritimes, where they were, their dad, his dad, their dad, their moms were all in those businesses, and now those don't exist anymore. And they could go to the oil patch, or they could join the military. So they joined the military. So it was really interesting to go on those trips to learn their stories as well, and have these adventures and go to these places. But yeah, to go back to your original point, the Chinese version of the greatest hits was the one that we were sort of involved in. The other greatest hits came out right as we had left Warner, and we were putting out, I think we were right about to put out The record after Rained Out Parade, Shot Down Satellite, that came out on Curve Records. And there may have been a little political jostling in there where the greatest hits came out at the same time as our new record on this new label that we were on. So we weren't involved at all in putting the other greatest hits, or the essentials, I think it might be called. We weren't involved in the liner notes or choosing the songs or even knew that it was coming out until it came out. So again, great that, again, like the going to an award show or presenting an award or winning an award, a thing on your life list that you may not think you'd ever get to experience. So yeah, we have a couple of greatest hits records. How big the hits are is debatable, especially on the one of them. But nice that there's a body of work that people know, and when we play live, we play the core of, some sub in and out. There's 6 or 7 or 8 songs that are kind of in our set list most of the time, and then 7 or 8 that are changing all the time. And the core are a lot of those ones from that era that connect with people, and the temperature in the room changes when you start playing that song and they know what it is and connect to their relationship with it for 30 years almost.
So I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't get a quote from the Curve Music founder, Brian Heatherman. So Brian says, 20 years ago, I was looking to add artists to my record label's roster and hopefully establish artists as well. At the same time, Widemouth Mason were looking for a new label partner to release their records. We worked out a deal and we were able to deliver a top 10 record in Canada at rock radio and get releases around the world. I can't think of anyone else more deserving of their success than these guys. Shaun, you're an incredibly hard worker. You have an incredible work ethic. You're fun to hang out with and work with. You're an incredible musician. I think most importantly, you're an incredible human being. I'm very honored to call you a friend. Congrats on all your success. I'm so proud of you. Well deserved. Please give Shaun my best. So that's from Brian Heatherman.
Oh, how kind, man. This is making me feel like, we're taping this on the day that we all found out that Ozzy Osbourne passed away, and that I'm so happy that he made it to the farewell concert and people get to get their flowers when they're alive. I think that's so beautiful, rather than just a celebration after. And hearing these quotes, and last year we got inducted into the Western Canadian Music Hall of Fame, and a bunch of our musician friends sent videos and quotes and things, and it's nice to feel the love. We really do appreciate that, and like we talked about, the peaks and valleys. It was a risk to take a bet on our band, and it wasn't assured that singles were gonna do well, and he invested in us, and we were grateful for it.
Yeah, today when I read that Ozzy Osbourne had passed away, it was hard to believe because it was just 17 days ago that he had done that Back to the Beginning fundraiser event. 17 days ago, they raised over $190 million USD for 3 different charities. And then, the whole world for the last 17 days have been praising Ozzy, and he's, him and Black Sabbath are the creators of metal, and he's a legend. And it's hard to believe. It's like he held on one last time to say thank you and to feel the love, and who raises $190 million? It's like no one but Ozzy can do that. And then he passes away. It was hard to grasp today seeing that.
Yeah, but it's poetic. I think it's beautiful that he got his last one. There's no unfinished business there. Everyone got to say how much they love him and how important he was to them. In so much of life that doesn't happen, and people leave not knowing what people really think of them, or never get to see the impact they had, that again in their own little world they might not be as aware of.
It reminds me of David Bowie when he passed away. It was either like a few days before or a few days after he released his final album that nobody knew. And he knew he didn't have much time. He records an album that is about life and death and retrospection. And suddenly he's gone, and he blesses everyone with this gift. and you're listening to it knowing he's not here anymore, but you're hearing his voice and his story, and you're like, only David Bowie could pull that final trick.
Oh, and it's such a killer record too. It's one of my favorite of his records, and I find that really inspiring. I think "Rough and Rowdy Ways" is one of the great Bob Dylan records. I think we've all subscribed to this myth of the 27. You know, you're supposed to do all your great work and then die when you're beautiful before as you're 27, and there's that feeling of diminishing returns that if you keep going to the well, it'll dilute and it'll not be as good over time. And it's such a music centric thing where when I think of other art forms, like I love the writer Al Purdy, and I love that he's like, I only started getting good in my late 40s, maybe. I had more to say. I was better at my craft. And I filmmakers who really just kind of discover themselves or know how to address every situation. I've always been inspired by that and thought you should continue to get better, even when your instrument changes and you're Joni Mitchell and you can't sing the high notes you used to sing, but those low notes you can now hit with that tone like a baritone saxophone is like there's so much weight in every word and every nuance that she does that I reject the idea that we only can do our best work when we're younger, because I've seen so many of my heroes do some of their best work when they were faced with their mortality. Like Bowie knew he was going and this was going to be his final statement. And it's so raw and wild. And "'Tis a Pity She Was a Whore." What the hell is that song and that drum beat? It's like he was pushing the boundaries and playing with wild, adventurous young jazz musicians, and it's just so inspiring. Prince, at the end of his life, when he even sort of flirted with it, where it was like, oh, he's going to be in his three-piece suit playing Vegas with big horn sections now, and every song is going to be a medley of a bunch of hits. All right, he's earned that. It might not be my favorite of his eras. Wait a second. He did that for about a year, and then he grew his afro out and became Hendrix's Band of Gypsies era with a new three-piece band. And he's going to follow that with doing a solo tour with just him and a piano. Like, this guy never stops evolving. He never stops reaching and taking wild, big swings and chances. And that's the way to do it and still love it. Even if you lose people along the way and gain other people along the way, it's such an exciting life to do that. Those are that's the path that I want to aim for.
Yeah, not only does David Bowie leave you with one final album, but he was on every list of the best albums of that year when it came out. So he left you with an all-time great album. We have a question here from Sarah Millette. Her question is, what was it like having a legend like Gordie Johnson not only produce your album, but actually join the band?
It was, I mean, when we first met Gordie, when we got on that tour and he was wearing, racing gloves on his hands and the Elvis glasses, and we were huge fans of, the 500 Pounds record. And then when that one came out, that was meeting legend Gordie Johnson. We then played hundreds of shows together. I think we've seen each other's bands more than we've seen any other artists ever in our lives, and no one has time to get close, and became brothers. Like, had funny adventures together. He produced the Stew record, but he wasn't playing in the band obviously yet, but was always a big brother to us that we could go to with industry questions or just life questions or that kind of stuff. He was just our friend and our bro. When we were working on what became No Bad Days, working on the songs for it, that was right as Earl left the band. And in the meantime, I had done a solo acoustic opening tour for Heart, where I opened for them at a few places. And the promoter of that tour went, "This was really great, and it was good. What are the Masons doing in the next while? Because we're doing a ZZ Top tour, and I know you opened for them back in '97. Do you want to open this run? And that would set up your next record really well." And I was like, yeah, but in my brain going, but we don't have a bass player. Our bassist just left the band. So I phoned Gordy and went, "Hey man, you produced a lot of bands, you know a lot of people. You know how it is at this point. That of course we need someone to be a great bass player and have big ears. There's a little bit of someone playing a P bass with flats that looks like it's from the 60s or 70s is probably going to be a better fit than someone playing a Ibanez sound gear bass up here and flapping and popping and stuff. So there's sort of a vibe of we're open to someone putting their fingerprints on it, but musically it sort of has to match. But the most important thing is who's good in a van or on a bus when they're tired. Like if things go sideways, who doesn't turn into a crybaby, or who's just waiting for someone to fix it? Like who's a good person that you would go on the road with if you had to go on the road with someone? Because 23 hours of the day is off stage, so that hour on stage has to be good. But who's good in other situations? Who's funny when they're tired, not a dick? And he went, I nominate me. And we were like, wait, what? And he went, well, I was actually a bass player before I was a guitar player. And I would love to play the bass with you guys. I never get to play the bass. And obviously I love ZZ Top and would love to go on the road with them. So let's just do the tour and see what happens. And we got together and rehearsed, and it felt really good right away because, of course, we've made records together. We played hundreds of shows, hung on hundreds of buses and in hotel rooms afterwards, knew each other really well. And then we were like, should we just go into the studio with the three of us and make this record, and you can produce and play bass? And yeah, it feels good. And as we were negotiating that, his wife Alex, who manages his affairs, was like, look, you can either pay Gordy to produce this album and go on the road with you, or he just wants to be in your band. Can he just be in your band and then you don't have to pay him? He just wants to play the bass. And then you can, when you do shows, you can all share the money. And we were like, it felt like a band from that first sound check that we did on the ZZ Top tour. So he's, to everyone else, he's that guy. To me, he's the guy I text about, food that we're making. We mostly text each other about that stuff and the beauty of 70s Stratocasters and music and funny things. But yeah, he's been a big time big brother to us. And him joining the band not only was great for us musically, he knew Billy Gibbons a little bit from working on records with Warren Haynes. He had produced a Warren record that Gibbons and Haynes were handing a Les Paul back and forth to each other at the end of one song. And that's what's on the record, and Gordy was engineering it. So when Gibbons saw that Gordy was with us at that first sound check we did in Vancouver on that tour, he just came up on stage and started holding court and telling stories. And he didn't stop for the rest of the tour. He'd be like, come on my bus, or let's go find a little club to jam in, or let me play you some songs I've been working on. And that was one of the greatest, most fun tours that we ever had, that set up then a bunch of touring we did on our own in Canada with Gordy playing bass. And then we did a bunch of big and wide tours where it'd be like, he'd play with us, and then we would play with Big Sugar. We're on stage for 4 hours a night, touring back and forth across the country. That was when, Big Sugar's a three-piece now. It was a huge band at that time. So lots of friends, lots of fun, lots of laughs, lots of stupid adventures. It was a really, really good time that we had playing together. And then naturally, he needed to focus on more Big Sugar stuff. And he was also like, my kids are getting older and I should be home more while they're still at home, which we totally could understand, of course. So there was the era where we went to make, and you're probably getting there in the trajectory of working your way there. But after we made No Bad Days and toured with it, that was kind of where we paused and had children and wanted to be with them more, and didn't go on the road as much. And to people on the outside, it might have looked like, are you still a band? And we were always doing a show a month or a couple shows a month or doing some festivals in the summer, but we weren't touring hardcore. We weren't putting out records and putting out singles. And it was a really important time for us as human beings and musically. I would shed it. You'd think when you're on the road, you're playing all the time, but you don't have as much time to really practice. Like practice as far as I can't do this thing now. I want to be able to do it at this point. So each day I have to do it this much and progress this much to get here. And I can't do that on the road as much because there's always things going on, or you're playing, or when you are playing, it's jamming with other friends, and it's not that kind of dedicated, make yourself better practicing. So I really dug into that during that time. And when we started making the next record that we made, which was I Want to Go With You, I really started digging into the three slide lap steel style that I was playing. In fact, was working on a record as a producer that Ryan Dahl from Limblifter and Age of Electric and Mounties was working on the record with me in the studio, and he had a Airstream trailer outside of the studio that we'd go hang out in when we were taking a break. And a friend of mine had made me a lap steel. We did a series of shows called Guitarmageddon in Saskatoon with a bunch of Saskatoon musicians like Rain Wolf, the guy Curtis Scarrow, who I saw playing behind his head in Buds that day that I walked into it. A bunch of our Saskatoon musician friends threw this thing together. And Curtis, the behind the head guy, hadn't really been playing guitar in a while. And I cajoled him, like I do with Saf, out of retirement to do these shows with us. And he thanked me by giving me a lap steel that he had hand carved and built that had, the fret markers were lines he'd drawn, the pickup was held up by a stack of quarters he drilled a hole in. And it was really, really beautiful and thoughtful. And he gave it to me, and I went, I can't make any sense of this thing. My arm tenses up when I play it with just a bar. I have one digit. When I play guitar, I have all my other fingers. And even when I play slide on guitar, I use my other fingers a lot and press down behind it or do things where it's just like my pinky, but it's made of glass. When I'm holding this bar, I'm a numbskull. I play out of tune. I can't move with any agility. And then when we were in the Airstream that day, I'd been leaving that lap steel at the studio for them to use because I just couldn't find a way to find my voice on it. And that day, I discovered, I was like, if I put a slide on another finger, then I have two things. Then I can do kind of more melodies and riffs, and I can even, what if I could hold one almost like a capo, since a lap steel, in my case, is tuned to an open major chord, and I can add a seventh to it, or add a fourth to it, or add a second to it. And if I play it so it just unlocked a bunch of things that day. And then I went off the deep end. It was like I was putting all kinds of things on my hand. I went, well, if you have five things, you might as well just use your fingers. I grew up loving some of the artists I didn't mention early on that there was a special connection I had with, were like Charlie Hunter or Roland Kirk, Ruston Roland Kirk, or Stanley Jordan, or people who added a technique to the conversation. They didn't just add their musical voice. Roland Kirk was like, he could play three horns at once and circular breathe, so he was playing harmonies on two saxophones and another thing. Stanley Jordan was doing incredible pianistic tapping on stuff. Charlie Hunter playing sort of bass and guitar simultaneously. I always had a special place in my heart for those styles of musicians who added a technique, and I wanted to find that. And I realized I might have discovered it on lap steel, but what made all of those people great was that it wasn't just a gimmick that made it harder to do what they could have done on a standard guitar. And I was sort of in that place at first, when I was like, all these things, why don't I just use my fingers? But then certain things started to hit me where I was like, I could have one note move lower and one note move higher and one note stay the same. So I could resolve, eventually, at first I tried a bunch of things, but eventually I stumbled on this. So I carried them around in a glove, because it's the shape of them. So it's the best applicator and easiest thing to carry them around in. And then when I take the glove off, they're just on my fingers in the right position. So at first I was using regular slides and kind of having to, if I wanted to catch a single note, I kind of had to grab the edge of the string with it and try to not hit it with my finger. And then I discovered this company called the Rock Slide that makes these ball tip slides where the end of it comes to a round part. So I could play single notes with these, or even put them in between a string and play double stops with them. And this could be the capo that I add notes to, or this could be the capo, and if I push these notes down behind it, it goes down there. So obviously you can see it unleashed this like wealth of possibilities. And I was starting to explore that by the time we were going in to make I Want to Go With You. And I could only reliably play chords in a few different positions, and my intonation wasn't that great yet. I started showing up to gigs in Vancouver that I would do as just like funk jam band kind of things, going, sorry guys, I just brought the lap steel tonight. And it's like, if you're learning French, you can go live in France and screw up French a lot until people correct you, and then you can actually speak French, versus taking French lessons and conjugating verbs, and you're not immersed in it, so you don't have to learn. So like, sorry guys, I'm gonna hit the ditch a bunch tonight, but I have to go through this to get good on this thing I've decided to give a try. So when we went in to make I Want to Go With You, we thought, what if we just track it Saf and I, and then add the bass after? So we started working with Ryan. At the time, he had a room in what was Greenhouse to us, but I think eventually was called Song City, kind of in East Vancouver. And he had this room with a guitar room downstairs and a drum room upstairs with a wall missing so you could see the drums. So Saf and I were looking at each other, and because it was really bluesy material, the bluesiest stomp blues, like Charlie Patton style more than Stevie Ray Vaughan style blues record we'd made, the arrangements were pretty loose, and we kind of played a little bit differently every time. And a bass player looking down at my hands going, okay, he's making this shape. Is that a G? Like, where do I go? I can't follow along with what you're doing on this jammy part. So we thought, what if we just do it, the two of us, and then add in bass parts after? And found that to be really exciting, that we went places we wouldn't have gone otherwise. And then Ryan just started, in his words, I just chucked some bass on this track, so when we listen back, there's bass on it. And he on purpose tried to not be obvious with the bass parts, where like it really just fades into the guitar part you're doing, so that it's one big guitar rather than being a bass part on this song. Because what you're doing on guitar is really interesting, and when we put the real thing on it, something else might happen, but this will just work. And we went, actually, I kind of dig that. So he played bass on some of those songs. Darren Paris, who was touring with us, played on a song or two, and I played bass on a couple songs. And we just went, that's what it's going to be. We made our bluesiest record. We can't wait to go on the road and play this for everybody. It's all about connecting with people. I want to go with you. Yeah. And then the pandemic happened, and there was no going anywhere with anybody, and there was no touring to support that record.
And the rock god said nay.
And although, I have this theory that I think the pandemic and the break that it forced, this unprecedented few years that people weren't touring, man, I saw the Stones about a year ago. I saw the Black Crowes maybe a year and a half ago. I saw a bunch of bands that I bet if those singers had been singing all those years, when I heard them recently, they would have been different beasts. Because there were times where it was like, I wonder if that dude's going to shout himself out. And that was back in the aughts. I think that break was really good for musicians, certainly not lots of their finances or their momentum, but for the people who'd been doing it for a long time, I think that extended the the live careers of a lot of musicians, that they got to rest their ears, rest their throats, rest their bodies. And when they came back, they were so hungry and excited to do it, but also well rested in a way they hadn't been. And I think, depending on what you made of that time, it was like if you ever talked about, oh, I want to write a novel, but I don't have time. That was your time to do it. I was fortunate in that when we did sort of hang back a little bit after No Bad Days, I started doing some other gigs, and I had started working with a guitar component designer and manufacturer here in the greater Vancouver area called Graphtech, who supplied nuts and saddles and bridge pins to a bunch of, Gibson, Martin Taylor, these Seagulls, the mule guitar I have there, the Fender that I have over there. So I was fortunate that I was building and having these relationships with my guitar company heroes, getting to, talk to the people who designed the first guitar I ever played about. We're thinking of building this thing called the Acoustasonic, and we need a nut and saddle and bridge pins for it. And let's work on that. So I was fortunate to be doing that during the pandemic, and we didn't have to lean on a lot of like, let's do some live streams or some drive-in concerts. Staff became a lawyer and became a music lawyer who works in Toronto now, during kind of right before that time when we were on the road. So we both leaned into other things a bit during that time when we were focusing on being good dads. Then when we started playing together again, I realized during the pandemic and leading up to it, I had really dug into playing the instrument in a way that I hadn't when we were just touring and writing all the time, and rediscovered playing along with records, and would do a thing where I'd go, okay, I have everything set up in my headphones. I'm going to put this playlist on random shuffle. And there was that TV show Quantum Leap back in the day, where the guy would just arrive in someone's body at a moment where something big was going to happen to them with no preparation, and go, uh-oh, what am I going to do? And he had to solve something or do something. I was like, let me play Quantum Leap. And whoever turns up in my headphones, whether it's Fela Kuti or the Beatles or Medeski, Martin and Wood or whatever it is, I have to jam along with them as if I'm on stage with them, because I can't be on stage anywhere for a while. And I have to immediately start playing the right thing for that song. Came back energized and ready to dig into a different part of my songwriting. And I think there's a big stylistic leap between the on purpose kind of really digging into our blues roots on I Want to Go With You, to when we started working on what became Late Night Walking. It was like, I have all these other moves I can do now in tune on the lap steel, and can go adventurous places on it. So our song structures can be different, and the places that this goes can have a lot more layers in it, because I can just simply do more now.
So you talked about the albums No Bad Days in 2011. You talked about I Want to Go With You in 2019. That brings us all the way up to the new album Late Night Walking from 2023. Before we dive into that, I have some kind words from Reed Shimozawa. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly, who's been playing bass with Widemouth Mason. This is what Reed says. He says, Shaun is one of the most gifted individuals I've met, played with, or even seen. He's the most humbling guitarist and singer, but somehow he makes you want to dig in and play more. So that's from Reed.
I love that the beyond people saying nice things, that it's all about he's inspiring me or pushing me to play more. That's what I want on my gravestone, I think. He made me want to play more music. I love that. Thanks, Reed.
So with this new album, Late Night Walking, there's 3 singles: You Pushed Me, My Own Mistakes, Other Side of Tonight. Man, it must have felt good after the insanity of the pandemic to get back at it with this album and get out there. I listened to the entire Widemouth Mason discography several times with a good pair of studio headphones. I listened to this album many times. Am I crazy, or is this one of the band's best albums?
We're unreliable narrators in that sense, and that I think every band, when they're working on something, feels like this is the best thing we've ever done. But we we accept the words of our friends who've known us for a long time, and all of them were like, "This is something completely different. Like your band isn't done yet, I don't think, because where did these songs come from, and where did this? There's a lyrical prowess that is different, and there's a musicianship that's different, and this was a really fun one because we once again tracked just Sap and I at Ryan's place, but he had moved from East Vancouver to a log cabin complex paradise overlooking the ocean on a mountain on Main Island off the coast here. And we went and lived at his place and the thing we stumbled on was go there for like 3-4 days, do a bunch of recording, and then go on the road, leave and go play, and don't think about what you did, don't listen to what you did, and come back 2 weeks later and pull the tracks up and listen to them, and then see what you have there. So we did that a few times and then went, let's send these tracks to Gordy to play on at his studio outside Austin, but let's not give him any notes. Let's not tell him, hey, I'm kind of hearing this on this one. Let's make this like a film camera that you send the film in to get developed, and you don't know what you're going to get until it shows up in that envelope after. So we sent him all the tunes, and our inbox steadily started filling up with things that he'd added to it. And it was like, is that a fretless? Are you playing harmonics there? Or, hey, I thought this part just stuck on the one, but you added a move there that wasn't there. That's interesting. So he and Ryan started messaging each other back and forth, nerding out about engineering stuff and producing stuff and mastering stuff. And we were just delighted with what he sent back. And he was going, this is the best record you've ever made. I've known you since your first record. Actually, the first thing he said to me after playing on the songs was, you're okay, right? Like, I listened to the lyrics as I was running these songs down, and you're doing all right, right? And I was like, I'm really good. I'm in a really good place. Some of the songs were actually old ones that I played when I was solo touring acoustically in between mates and stuff that had staff beats applied to them and came back around. And I think some of the beauty of work on a record for a bit and then leave and then come back is you can kind of go, which of these 4 or 5 ideas are kind of the cornerstone of what we're doing? Maybe 3 or 4 other ones now don't fit now that we've listened to them with fresh ears. Now, if we're going to make a record around these, we need a weirder one than this one. We need a faster one than this fast one. We need a slower one than the slow one. And we need something totally different. And so we were able to write and work toward it that way. And then, send the pieces to Gordy to play bass on. And Reed Shimozawa, who people might know from his band Zucker Baby, or they might have seen him playing with Kyle McKierney or a bunch of different people as a guitar player. Ryan Dahl actually suggested him to us as a bassist when we had a gig that Gordy couldn't do, Darren Paris couldn't do, no one was available, and he was like, well, Reed's actually probably a pretty good bass player, and we met him, and he's become a huge part of our band, and nails that thing, nails it on stage, looks cool as hell, plays beautifully, has killer gear, and then is the funniest, sweetest, helpful, thoughtful, cool guy off stage. So you do this long enough and you're like, I don't want to be around any douchebags. There's enough of them in the biz. There's enough of them in the world. And as I alluded to, after working at the guitar component company for 6 years or so, I made a move and started working at a tech company that actually works with promoters and festivals and artist managers and helps them centralize a bunch of data from a bunch of different places and actually have them, rather than third parties like social media or those things, own their direct connection with their fans. So it's something I'm really passionate about. And it turns out I'm crushing it. And got promoted, and I'm having a great time helping the music festivals that we play. And in fact, many of the ones we play at, I end up working with in this way. But all that is to say, Staff and I got to a place where we both can support our lives and our families really well without the band even existing. So there isn't the pressure on the band for us to pay our mortgages. We don't have to go, let's go on tour again because bills are going to come in this month too. We did an electric tour, let's do an acoustic tour. So we were able to say no to stuff we didn't want to do, prioritize times where we wanted to be with our families, make exactly the records we want to make when we want to make them, and hire people to work on them with us, and to collaborate on putting them out and all that stuff. So we're in a beautiful position now of having complete control over it. After I Want to Go With You in the pandemic and all that stuff, before the pandemic, most of the shows we had done had been festivals, where it's like, we're not really sure what our market value on drawing on our own is. We've done a lot of big and wide tours, a lot of festivals where it's us and 4 or 5 other bands. But we had, and so we were, when Late Night Walking was about to come out, we were like, let's book not a 9-week tour across the country, because our fans are mostly our age and are like, yes, it's great in the Friday wherever you are, but the Sunday, Monday, Tuesday gigs in probably a club at 10 at night, it's harder for our fans to get to. So we were like, let's do it like adults and just go to a region and play 5, 6, 7, 8 shows there, or 3 shows there, and then fly home. And then go to Alberta and do that, and then go to Saskatchewan and do that. And let's just see, there'll be us headlining. Let's see what the response is. Maybe it will be, all right, it was really fun to be a popular band and have people come to your shows. That era is over. And if that era was over, I would still play as much music every day that I do. It's still my yoga mat. It's still where I go to. I still do it for hours. But we were like, let's just see. And to our surprise and delight, it was gangbusters. And it was not just fans who, part of what played to our strengths was a lot of the places we played we hadn't been to in 3 or 4 years, or even before the pandemic. So there were people who were excited to see us because we weren't there every 6 months like we had to have been when all we did was tour mostly in Canada to make a living. But we started hanging out after the show. We don't do any paid meet and greets and any of that stuff. We just come hang out with people after the show. And the number of people who were coming up, again, like I said at the beginning, that were like, your music has been part of my life for 25 years. You know, we met at your show and we're all friends now. You invited us into a sound check when we showed up at the venue and didn't know it wasn't all ages, and you snuck us in during the sound check and let us watch and were nice to us. Then we're here now and we have kids and we brought them with us, and we've loved your band this whole time. And it turns out a bunch of other people remember too, coupled with, like I said, people coming and going, I didn't know your band had songs. I just knew you were that lap steel guy with the 3 slides whose videos I watch, who can play Hot for Teacher on lap steel. Like that's the only thing I knew about you. And now, man, I like your band. I didn't know you sang. I like how you sing. So we've been so fortunate to get to this position through things falling, the bottom falling out of the music business, and please don't, I know you're airing this whole thing. I don't want this part to be taken out of context, because I respect the hustle and I know that we came up in a different music business than everyone else. But I think it would sour it for me if I felt like I had to constantly be doing content for content's sake. If we had to sell meet and greets and Patreons for me to share music, because there was no other way for us to make a living as musicians. And no hate or disrespect for people who rightly understand that that's what you have to do if you're mostly just playing music, especially in one territory. That part of it, I love that we've progressed to a point that we we have other gigs that fill that in for us, and we can say yes or no to things. And we meet people because we love to meet them and share the history that we have together, or to meet new people who are there for the first time. And Staff is the first one to tell you that he would be the first for things to become normal. This fucking arena isn't as nice as last night's arena. This nice hotel isn't as nice as yesterday's hotel. Oh, there are only this many people here tonight. And even he, after getting to do this again after the pandemic, and then riding whatever wave it is we're currently riding, where we're mostly under the radar to the general public, but for our band and our fans and our shows, it's doing really well. We're just so thankful every day, so grateful that people listen to us and that are excited for us to be diverse and try new things and take big swings, and will come sing along with my old self at the top of their lungs. But on that tour that we did, the first one back, partly because of the mechanics of when I play on lap steel, I don't like to sit down with it live because it brings the energy down. And also, in order to play in tune, I kind of have to move my body in relation to where my hands are, where the guitar is. So sitting, I can't do that as well. Where when the guitar is up on a stand, then I can move around it and do different stuff, and the energy level is up. So because of we'll set the stand up for the songs from I Want to Go With You and Late Night Walking, and we've started doing some older songs on lap steel too, like The Game and Preacher Man song and stuff. And then I'll switch to my Nighthawk or whatever for the set where we'll throw in Smile and My Old Self and those things. Then we went, well, maybe it makes sense just to do all those ones on the lap steel all at once. And then I thought back to a thing that Gordy talked about when the scene came out, when he was like, I bet none of these bands have the balls to play the hit first. Like, everyone saves the hit for the encore or nobody leaves. He's like, plant a flag in the ground and go, here it is first. I'm so confident in what else we have to show you that let's see how many of you leave once we start playing the second song. We made a call on that first night to go, let's play all the stuff from Late Night Walking and I Want to Go With You first. So it'd be like 8 new songs to begin the set. And then switch to Smile and Why and all those other ones. And thought, it just works operationally to just set up the stand and then move the stand and then play after that. And the set list had a really good flow to it. And the first night that we did it was like, and the first night that we played at the Aeolian Hall in London, we were like, okay, we could either add 1 or 2 of the new songs to the set list, or we could add like 5 of them and just play them all for the first time in front of an audience tonight. Yeah, we got the balls for that. Let's go. So we did that, and the response was amazing. And then when we switched to the songs people knew, it went up a level, and then so we did that for the entire tour. And it was, again, a way of, we're going to play a bunch of the songs if you know our band, but we're going to show you what we've been up to since that you might not have heard, because there aren't those Much Musics, those weekly magazines, those local reps who have relationships. You might not even know that we've put out any records since Rained Out Parade. And that's cool. The algorithm didn't serve it to you. Maybe you life gets in the way, you don't know about certain bands, or you didn't dig some of those works. But here's where we're at now, and the response to it was amazing. And people singing along with songs that they were hearing for the first time. By the second time the chorus came around, they're like, I hit every red light. It's like, this goes back to those things we felt in those little bars in Yellowknife and stuff. When you play a song and you go, all of a sudden, everyone started looking at the stage and all their heads started doing this. What just happened? Let's make sure we can recreate those moments. And so we're so grateful that that's been happening on these most recent tours, that our audience is with us, whether it's just us playing or we're on a festival. And we have a really great mix of festival gigs this summer, which are always fun because you're like, it's us and Crash Test Dummies, or us and Big Sugar, or us and 5440, or Philip Stace, or whoever it is. people that we know and we like hanging out with, that we get to hang out with and share an audience with, is beautiful.
So I want to mention those upcoming gigs, but before I do that, I enjoyed Late Night Walking, the newest album, so much. I have a ton of notes. I feel like it deserves to get this recognition. So I'm going to rapid fire through my notes. It won't even be questions, it'll just be statements, and then we'll just
Okay.
mention the live shows that are coming up. So listening to
All
Late
right.
Night Walking, just some notes that I want you to absorb here. So I found it was such a pleasant listen sonically. So I have a background in audio engineering. So having the good headphones on, it sounds incredible sonically. It's very warm. It's a very warm sounding album. The low end on this album in the bass and the guitar is so thick and crunchy. So it's something between the instruments, the equipment, the performance, the mixing, the editing, the mastering, all that stuff. Whatever you did, there's just such warmth to it. It's a pleasurable listening experience. So take that for whatever you want to take that for.
Oh, how I'll take it, Joel, is that's all Ryan Dahl. Not only him engineering it and having accumulated and exhibited his mastery over the gear he has, but also the way he's curated that gear at his place on Main Island. It'll be like, let me put my drink down on. Is this a side table? No, it's two Marshall plexi heads stacked on top of each other. It's like everything was like this tremolux. Here's a Marshall head that Hendrix played through when he toured Canada. He has such inspiring gear, and it was such an inspiring place to be. But he's spent so many years now producing records, engineering records, mastering records, mixing records, that he really brought that awareness to it, and that sonic sculpting of it. And then he and Gordy just loved. I couldn't believe they'd only sort of met each other before, because they had so much in common and just nerded out on the sound part of it and enjoyed that. So thank you for recognizing and noticing that part of it, and props to Ryan. That was his expertise at work.
A few more things. I don't think your vocals have ever sounded better than this album, especially songs like Habitual. The low register in the verses, man, your voice is the chef's kiss. A
Thank
few more
you.
things. The album is kind of badass. There's like a badassness to it. Take that for however you want to take it. The songs Cold Tea and Raw Deal have amazing, unique guitar solos, and the two solos are very different from each other. So the point I'm making is that I think you're still getting better as a guitarist, which goes back to you saying you've been practicing hours every night forever, essentially. The song You Pushed Me, I find that the line, the I didn't fall out of love, you pushed me, is such a clever phrase. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah,
Man, I
long.
had to Google that one after it popped in my head. I was like, surely somebody has used this. You stumble on those ones sometimes where it's like Paul McCartney singing Yesterday to everybody, going, when it was just called Scrambled Eggs, like, this melody, did I steal this from somewhere? That line to me, or the one in Habitual of we spin around. Oh, now I've lost it in my brain. We're always spinning around. We just get used to it. Like the world's always turning, but you're just not aware of it. Like, there are those ones that, as a writer, again, to go back to that, what you do, with your pen or with your guitar can delight you on the same level as hitting a moment with the band in front of a bunch of people. And grateful for when those moments happen, and grateful they connected with you.
And wasn't there another lyric similar to that? Something like the sun is always there, but we just turn away. There was another lyric
Yeah,
somewhere.
the sun never goes down. We turn away from it. We're always spinning around. We just get used to it. Yeah, and I was stayed up a bit late that night after writing that one, just buzzing. And I love that you can still do that. You can still, and a thing I tell a lot of young writers is, you think at a certain point it just becomes easier. You have a method that you always go to. And I've read enough and seen enough and experienced enough to know that John Lennon and you were as terrified of the blank page and had no idea what they were going to put on it. And you just jump and find a place to land. and let your music collection guide you to what's a good thing to do or not a good thing to do. Free associate and just riff and be in a room where you can make any noise and none of them are wrong, and you can just play, like capital P, play and fuck around. And like my guitar on my bed when I had the flu that day, like just hit the thing and see what happens. There isn't a Mel Bay book that teaches you how to do what Tom Morello does, like find little pockets in it that are exciting to you and see if you can turn them into something. It never stops and it never becomes easy, but you don't want it to become easy. And these moments will happen where it's like struggle with this line, struggle with this line, and then one that you're like, oh, that's a really good line, as a scatter my ashes in a hotel room. I'm still proud of that one almost 30 years later. I hadn't heard anyone say it. It's a good image. It's like a little movie. You can see it happening. It's like in a few words told a bunch of story. I love that I got to be the one that found that one.
I have another one you should be proud of, and this kind of goes to the play around and try different things. In the song "Long Distance Love," is being able to pull off singing the word impenetrable, which I have trouble just saying. Is that the equivalent of getting a double word score in Scrabble?
I think it might be. There are the weird words that you either try and work things into a song just for the sake of working them in, but it captured it. I kick
and you say it
myself
more than
every
once,
time.
so you get
Yeah,
extra
you're
points.
impenetrable to me. You're impenetrable to me. The rhythm of it is really pleasurable to sing over and over again. That's another one that was a much older song that I had played acoustically years before, and actually had worked on when I was traveling on a train going across the country. The Canadian Pacific does the holiday train food bank drive, and I made a record on the train as it was traveling, and played that song. And when we re-recorded it, I love the staff beat on it. I love the performance, and like you said, the tones. I think I played Ryan's 1958 or 59 Stratocaster on that song. Like musically and tonally, it was happening. But I blew the punch. I only realized when I listened to the original version of it at the very end of the song originally, after, because the idea is the person you love is gone. They're always gone, and they're on adventures on the road, and you're at home, and you're just like a person down. And I wrote it. I'd gone on tour and played in Greece, and my wife was at home going, "Yeah, just looking after the baby. What did you do today?" "I swam in the Aegean Sea and I did all this stuff. I'll be home in a few days and we'll do this." But I had the idea for the song that she was like, "It's funny. I turned on the TV and I think it was Shirley Valentine or something that's set in Greece was on TV." And it was like, well, what if there's a device in it where every time she turns on the TV, there's, the Guns of Navarone, or there's another movie about Greece in there. And so because it was Greece and talking about that, and the song is about when this person is away, when they get back in the room for the first little while, you love each other, you're close, but you've been apart. So it's kind of like a long distance love. And it takes a while to, anyone who's been on the road for a long time will tell you, the first week you're like speaking completely in Big Lebowski and snatch quotes, inside jokes that nobody else gets. You right around with like a 10, you're ready to go, and everyone else is falling asleep. So at the end of it, on the original version of the song, I sang, "Are we ancient history? Are we ancient history?" And I forgot that line when we recorded it on the record and sang "You're Impenetrable to Me" again. And to me, the "Are we ancient history" is like the summing up of that song. So if I had one thing to do over, I would sing that line, which I do sing live when we play it now, every night. So the I've let it go, and I'm not going to try and insert it on the record. But there are some times where you get that line, and then other times where you're like, "Oh man, I should have said this." Or there's versions of Dylan playing "Tangled Up in Blue" where he has the theatrical cake makeup on his face with the hat on the maybe Rolling Thunder tour. and he's constantly changing the words or the his and hers and the time of it. And it's kind of like songs aren't ever done if you decide that they aren't, and you can always have another idea. I love how Jason Isbell sometimes in the song Speed Trap Town will sing it when someone else's mama causes heart attack versus when someone who wasn't mama causes heart attack. I love when songwriters take like, ooh, I had another idea for that one, and I'm going to throw it in the live version. So
You have some upcoming shows: Island Folk Festival in Duncan, BC, Medicine Hat Exhibition with the Crash Test Dummies. In August, you have a show with the Sheepdogs in Saskatoon. So our listeners,
oh,
go to the website, go purchase your tickets now. I saw you guys on July 14th, 2022 at Blues Fest in Ottawa with the Tea Party. And I was right up front. I was right on the railing for that show, but there was someone that was even closer to you guys. And that is Jeff Burrows, drummer for the Tea Party. And he sent in some kind words. And Jeff says,
oh,
I've been a Wide Mouth Mason fan since the moment I saw their first video on Much Music. The musical telepathy between Shaun and Saf on drums is one that is barely comprehensible to most people, whether in a band or not. Watching them side stage is always the best. Shaun is ferocious and a master of his craft. It doesn't get much better than that. It doesn't get much better than them. That's from Jeff from the Tea Party.
man, thank you, Jeff. So kind. That's the beauty of festivals, is that it does bring old friends together, and you get to hang out in a way that you wouldn't get to otherwise. That's so kind to him. And obviously, what an incredible amount of sound and power those guys get out of a three-piece band. There's a real legacy of Canadian trios that we learned so much from those guys, not just in the way they play together, but I remember starting out going, look how poised they are. Look how just cool Stewart looks when he's like playing keys with his feet and bass with his hands, or vice versa. And Jeff with all his different tunings, and Burrows with the, crazy like precision and stuff that he plays with, but still has abandon and wildness in it, where you feel like, is he going to stick that landing? And then these people end up being real nice to you, and you hang out and become friends. And it's just such a constant learning experience. And now you stay in the game long enough, we're all running into each other going, hey man, you okay? I heard, some people died, or some people, we're all still here. And in light of the Aussie thing, it's like, let's do this to death until we're dead. And the world already has all the other artists in it that aren't you. So your job now, especially with us in the position we're in, we're not going to knock Olivia Rodrigo off of a chart spot. And nor should we. She's fucking awesome and looks amazing and sounds amazing and writes amazing songs. And I'm happy my daughter is a massive fan. I'm a huge fan too. And we went to see her live and she delivered. We're not going to take that position. So the world needs me to be the meest me possible and explore all this weird stuff I'm doing and write stuff that maybe nobody else would write. Like, find the outer edges of what you do that you're maybe even scared of and go there. And for Saf, it's like, well, someone else can do all the other stuff. You focus on Saf beats and do the hell out of them. Like, time is short now, both for all of us as we get older, and who knows what's going to happen. So find the youest you and keep trying. A word I keep coming back to is buoyancy. The industry has a lot of ways. If after that first guitar died on me in front of all my school friends, I could have stopped playing music then, died of humiliation. When things, went away from the band and we had to decide, is it worth it to go still do this on a shoestring and hope we can generate something else coming around? The answer was yes. And finding, as a player, again, I keep going back to every day find a new thing that's impossible and work your way toward it, it honestly does make the second most impossible thing a lot easier. It's a trick of the brain or something, but it's like, if this is the hardest thing you can do, the second hardest thing just got easier. And if you just keep adding to that, you progress. I've also found a lot of progress and joy in learning other instruments. I had a musical director approach me a few years ago and go, I know you play, resonator guitar or dobro, and we need someone to do that in this musical production we're doing, but we also need that person to play mandolin and clawhammer banjo. Can you do that? And I was like, by the time of the show, I'll be able to, I promise. So I went and got one of each and started just woodshedding and watching YouTube videos, and there's weird move. Clawhammer banjo is some unintuitive right hand motion for someone who's used to being a finger picking guitar player or a plectrum guitar player, in that you don't strum, you just kind of hit the string with your hand in the shape of a hammer, and your thumb kind of glances the high string while you're moving away from it, but you're not picking it. And even just to do the simplest bum diddy rhythm, that's the signature rhythm of it, took me a few weeks of just wife and daughter watching a TV show, me in the bedroom going bong dicka bong over and over again. Mandolin, nothing has made my fingers stronger in the world than learning this, and these super heavy pairs of strings under your fingers. That there's stuff I can do on guitar now, and awareness of different tunings and different shapes and different touches with the pick that I've brought back to guitar playing from safaris and other instruments. So I would also tell that young kid, if there's another instrument sitting around, if there's a piano, if there's a ukulele or something, take a spin on them and see what you end up creating on them, and then what you bring back to guitar from trying those other things out. Because I bet you're going to find there were things where I'd be like, oh, I can't play mandolin more than this long. Now it's like I can play mandolin all day and night, and my fingers now on guitar, it's easy by comparison on an acoustic guitar, you know?
So let's blast through the final two fan questions before we wrap up. So this question is from Insight Creative Workshops. They say we had the good fortune to shoot a portrait of the band in Sun Peaks a couple weeks ago. As a photographer who traveled a lot for work, balance was a challenge. How do you manage to balance family with life on the road?
Well, I mean, we're in a very fortunate situation that we kind of balance life on the road with family, and that and it's, our kids are the age that my daughter came with me to when we played a festival in Humboldt, and hangs out at shows now and loves seeing it up close. And Staff's kids are both musical too, so they're coming to some things. It's a different era, but when they're really little, before you have a kid, you go, why do they say 16 months, 18 months instead of just like about half a year? Oh, because they're completely different human beings in 2 months, because they develop so quickly. Missing that was not something either of us were prepared to do. Now it's a little different that they're older, and it doesn't work in our favor really to go tour for 9 weeks at a time. The way that we're doing it is really the sweet spot of just the right amount of gigs, just the right amount of home time. And I know not everyone is in a position to be able to do that. So that's another thing for which we're very grateful. But yeah, it's someone said, I heard once, you can have it all, just not all at once. And I've really taken that to heart. Like in our 20s, we did 300 days a year for many years in a row, and we're delighted to do so. And now it wouldn't be as fun to do that, or missing, our, like I said, our children have started getting into singing and performing, or being in theater or writing songs. I'm sorry, I don't want to miss that to play a club I've played 10 times. I don't want that to be the focus, and family to be the extended piece of that. It's the other direction.
Final question. This is from Catlin Williams. Catlin's question is, music is obviously a huge part of his life, and now he's sharing that with his daughter. What is that like as a father and musician to be able to share that?
Oh, yeah, that's so my daughter's, yeah, really in the last year or so discovered not only playing guitar, had been playing piano before then, but really leaning into writing, as well as was in a couple theatrical productions, has been in a few movies and commercials, and loves acting. In fact, she saw me when I was in that musical that I focused on mandolin and banjo for, and I snuck her on stage to look out at the crowd from the spot. The band was on stage for the play, and she went, "Daddy, I want to do this." And afterwards, her mom and I and her spoke, and we were like, "Do you mean you want to be famous?" "No, no, no. I want to be an actor. Like, I listen to the way the crowd sounded. Listen to the way that person got to cry and then be super happy and then do the like. That's amazing. I want to learn how to do that." And so we worked backwards from it and went, "Well, if you want to do it, just wishing for it is gets you a little bit of the way there, but you have to put in the work. So let's find an acting school. Let's work with some coaches. Let's learn how to dissect a script and dig into a character. And if you still love it, that's the craft of it. And like me, I had to love the music part to survive the music business part. There's going to be a lot of rejection and a lot of no's in acting. So you have to love it for acting's sake. And there will be sold out theater nights of people cheering, but there will be nights of, yeah, you got really close, but we ended up picking the other kid because they look more like the mom actor. And that's going to break your heart. And then you'll have to move on to the next one. So watching her be a part of that world and it all be driven by her, where neither her mom or I need to live vicariously through having our kid in the entertainment business to feel a part of it. So it's all her decision. But she's a really great songwriter. Like, my daughter will do things like come home from school and go, "A rough day. I didn't get along with my friend, or I had an instance with the librarian, or I'm going to be right back." And she'll go in her room, close the door, and I'll hear strumming and stuff. And then she'll come out 40 minutes later and go, "You want to hear a song I wrote about my day?" I'm like, "Oh my God, this is my favorite thing that's ever happened, that you're taking the stress and pressure of everyday life and judoing it through your creativity to make it into something beautiful with really cool turn of phrases and interesting chord changes." And how much do you think it delights me that she'll walk into the living room with one of my guitars and one of her guitars and go, "What chord can I learn tonight?" She wanted to learn a song last night. I was teaching her how to play power chords for the first time. Like, there's nothing in the world better to me than her being excited about that and being able to share that with her. It's just awesome. So I do evangelize and talk about her work quite a bit, but I'm legitimately a fan. Like, she's kicking my ass to finish songs that I haven't finished because she'll go in her room and come out and send me 3 songs that are really good. So I have some work to do to catch up. A little more on my plate, but uh, I'm so inspired by her. And then for her to have friends to come over to write songs, I'm like, that's me and staff. We've come around full circle to now her friends are coming over to write songs. And whether you do it at all professionally or as a career, or the way that art and making art and collaborating and doing it in front of people connects you to a world that's very isolated and siloed and estranged right now. The way that I can play music or share a love of music with someone whose views on everything else I don't agree with, and we can have a great time doing that. That it's something that she's also discovered is that, some people are terrified to walk into a room full of people and do anything that draws attention to themselves, let alone speak in front of it. And if you've been in music and theater and arts, you relish that moment. You want the spotlight and the microphone to go shine and do it the best you ever did it, because you cared less in your room than you cared when you're in front of people. It makes me so happy. And I'm Saf and I have designs on, like, when his son and daughter and my daughter take over the band, we'll just sit back and I'll teach her how to play tri-slide lap steel. She's already singing and playing. His kids are playing drums and playing guitar and singing. Like, let's go 2.0.
Wide Mouth Mason Jr. That's great
Yeah.
that she's transmuting something negative into something positive. I've seen you've posted some videos of her performing, and man, she's already extremely talented. She's playing guitar, she's singing, her pitch is great, her voice is great. It's awesome, man. She's way more talented than I was at that age for sure. And with you
Oh,
adding power chords to her repertoire, she'll be playing Papa Roach songs before you know it. So I
it's
have
true.
three final questions for you as we wrap up here. When you look
Yeah.
back on your life and career, what are you most proud of and what are you most grateful for?
Wow. Um, well, I think the proud of part, I mean, we've especially after last year with the Hall of Fame induction and taking a pause to really look back over everything the band's done. I'm proud of the work. Like, I think we were I like that we've produced my favorite of our work now, this deep into our career, and have been writing a lot and working on a lot, and excited to keep that going. And and proud of our relationship with our fans, and the way that people feel about what our music is in their lives, and um, that part of it we're just so proud of and grateful for. I think that we always keep coming back to, that we get to do this. And what was the first part of the question? I think I forgot to answer that part.
Most proud of and most grateful for.
Oh yeah, most grateful for. Um, So I've had a crazy profound 2025, in that one after another, a few weeks apart, my parents both passed away at the beginning of the year. And it really makes you think about, you know, they were 70, I'm 50, 51. Like, what if there's only that amount of time left? What do you want to fill your time with? What do you want your life to be? You know, some people are so busy in preparation for when they're going to do the artistic thing or take the big swing or tell a person what you think about them or whatever it is. And the going through the process of the being with so much family and the memorials, and looking back over their lives and my life, they were two teenagers who hooked up and accidentally had a kid. And then that meant that neither of them got to, really live with their friends for a while, really get to have those young adult times, because they were parents right away. So they were like, well, I got to start being a cook or a chef, and I'll look after you and do this. And I think the thing that I'm most proud of, is the life that, when I look at, a generation back before them, I think, oh, here's the piece I was going for, is that the fact that everybody who said nice things about me said, there's a alluded to the sort of childlike wonder that has not been stomped out of me for whatever reason. Some of it, I think, is from my paternal grandfather. It was in his nature just to be like, this is the best water I've ever tasted. Oh my God, my day's made because this water is so cold and tasted so nice. I just am wired that way. And through whatever's happened, when tragedies or sad things befall me, it makes me lean into the things I'm grateful for, rather than get bitter and angry about the sad things that have happened. And I think that's been that, again, that word buoyancy, that, all right, well, that sucked. It's kind of like being an actor. Well, that was a rejection and a no. All right, well, so what? People have rejections and no's. Let's either stop, like I could have at that elementary school assembly, or you take another shot and look what might happen. I guess I'm most proud of protecting and nurturing and keeping that part of me alive through the music business, through life, through things happening, because it's been the wellspring that from which whoa, what if I put more slides on my hand came from. It's the wellspring that, what if I put these words together? That it's not optimism as much because things are fucked and getting fucked, but it's more of like I'm going to just keep trying. I find joy in the struggle. I find joy in the attempting. So I'm just going to keep doing that. And I guess I'm proud that part I've kept alive.
And if you could sit down next to your 10-year-old self and you could whisper words of advice, so taking everything you've learned since 10 years old, all the life lessons, the mentorship, the experiences, the ups and downs, the joy and the heartbreak, the accomplishments and the failures. If you could boil that down and whisper words to cute little Shaun sitting there, and you have a young daughter, maybe it's the advice you would give to your daughter if she would listen. What do you share?
Well, not as applicable because of the time. I would love to tell me, take more pictures. When we were on the road, first being on the road, pre-camera phones, in the beginning of our career, it felt like there was always someone around with a camera. There were documentary crews following us around, hey, little band from Saskatchewan is opening for the Rolling Stones or whatever, that I just felt like that would always be there. And now I look back and I wish I'd had a film camera or something that I just, moments that are forever just in my memory that I could have documented of Keith Richards' tech showing me around his guitars and his gear. And here's Macabre. Do you want to play it? Here's the third ever Fender Twin made, and nobody knows where one or two are. Or, hey, here's me hanging out with Keith and him pinching my cheeks like my little Ukrainian Bobby used to do. Like, I wish I had taken more photos. And if I had a time machine, I wouldn't change any mistakes or anything that happened to us, but I would put a camera in young me's hands. Luckily now everyone has.
Is there anything you'd like to say to the fans that have supported you over the last 30 years?
Just thank you. I say it every show. I say thank you for your years of years. And that's what it is at this point. It's, in fact, decades of, the only reason I'm not only doing what I do in this room is because of the generosity you've extended us by giving your time and coming to our shows and buying our merch and our records. And we couldn't do this without you, and we are eternally grateful.
So as we wrap up, I want to take a moment to acknowledge you for your lifelong pursuit of mastery as a singer, as a songwriter, as a guitarist. I want to commend you for having the courage to pursue this big dream, and you've worked towards it every day for the last 30 plus years. You've really shown the rest of us what is truly possible if you have a big vision and you commit your life to something. I want to thank you for putting out great music over the last 30 years. It's become the soundtrack to the lives of people around the world. I mentioned it's been a part of the soundtrack of my life since I've been 12 years old. I'm 40 now. Don't tell anybody. And I want to thank you, last but not least, for this interview, for sitting down with me for the last 3 hours now. Man, I had all these questions as a fan since 12 years old, and I had pages and paid 10 pages worth of questions, and you answered all these questions I had as a Wide Mouth Mason super fan. So Shaun, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Oh, Joel, thank you, man. And thank you for surprising me with the quotes from friends, and for obviously doing extensive research and putting lots of time and thought into going places I don't think I've gone in many interviews. So really appreciate it and appreciate you. And thanks for spreading the word about music and dedicating yourself to an art form. Appreciate you.
Thank you. You're very welcome. So to the Shaun Verreault fans, the Wide Mouth Mason fans, the podcast fans, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next episode. If you've enjoyed today's episode, please take a moment to subscribe, like, comment, and share. Who would you like me to feature next for a 2-hour deep dive interview? You can let me know in the comments. You can also send me an email at joelmartinmastery@gmail.com, or you can reach out to me on all social media platforms at joelmartinmastery. So I am done. I am complete. I approve this message, and I'll see you on the next episode.